Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button, Season 3, Episode 48, aka the final episode of the year. I'm one of your hosts, Alejandro, and with me is the Panda Bear.
Hey everybody, this is Paul. You can call me the Shepherd because I just made a ton of shepherd's pie about the size of like three of my heads.
Do
It
you
was
went
amazing.
Do you went hunting for the shepherd?
Yep, the shepherd is dead. I put him
Yeah.
in my oven and he was delicious.
Yes. So, Paul, we made it. It's December 14, 2023. The year is over. A year that started with me traveling, and a year that also early on you had to travel like permanently from one place to another. Can you
Oh
believe
yeah.
that's been this year?
I think after every time you've asked that this year, it's been an equal no from me. And just the insanity of what I had to do this year to change things in my life and careers.
Yeah.
A lot of different things going on, but it's just looking back at that first episode that we did just this year and
Mhm.
now I feel
It's
like there's
wild.
just a visible difference between us, not much less all of the things that have gone on in our lives.
Yeah, it's just wild to think that this was my first full year writing for season gaming. That happened very late. That last year, we got Sebastian kind of like filling in for the times that you couldn't come in, so we had like more consistent guest stars. October, we brought in so many different people after you had a couple unforeseen things happened to you, and I was able
Yep.
to kind of bring in a lot of guests that helped like raise the cachet for the show, like briefly from Travis from IGN, Hogue from Hogue Law, the two guys from Season Gaming, and I'm like, yes, like it's been fun, especially when we got to see the Spotify Wrapped and seeing the stats and seeing
Yep.
the immense like high percentage climb from the year before to this.
It's amazing that our guest spots have jumped up so much from nothing to people from IGN and Hogue Law and
Yeah.
Season Gaming themselves, and
Mhm.
Sebastian, who's also getting to be this big name dude.
Yeah.
Like,
Our biggest gains happened thanks to him because he was like cross promoting our show also. So, and me guesting over to his show, that helped too. It's all
yeah,
about that cross promotion, which is the irony. That was the idea of Statics Media originally before we rebranded to Escape. That
yep,
was PJ's original idea of like different content creators crossing over with each other. That was kind of like the idea of this X that is in the background. That then we're like, what does Statics even mean? And then we just kind of like rebranded to Escape as just an escape from the nonsense that's happening right now. And
See, that
especially,
that means we have to admit that PJ was ahead of his time and a
yeah,
visionary.
yeah, ahead of
So
his time, and he quit way before like he saw the vision come like come
it's like that
forward.
meme of the pickaxe guy in front of the diamonds, and he turned away
Uh
as
huh.
before he gets to it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so it's just funny how that kind of like low key happened this year, and it just happened kind of like on a whim as I was interacting with more people. Uh, my reviews help kind of like, especially with this people like getting Travis and Hogan, is because Ains, my EIC, kept talking about me and his shows, always mentioning, oh yeah, he calls me Alex because Alejandro's too hard for them to say like, oh yeah, Alex is the guy that yeah reviewed this game for us. So that kind of like became more and more ingrained in their minds of who I was. That then by the time that I was able to like contact them, he knew who I was immediately. So I went so they complied to be like, yeah, I'll do your show. So and with Travis, it helped that we played with him for one game. So I got to play two games with
yep.
him now. So and potentially a third one for January, the one that I send you the trailer. That I'm not gonna say which one, but it's a hilarious one. That it's so funny they gave him that one. But hey, Travis is ending a year with a 10 out of 10 game with Asgard's Wrath 2, his first ever 10 out of 10 he's ever given to any game, like
Wild.
ever. So it's like he is a tough critic. It was fun. Like remember when we met? I show you that I gathered all his reviews to kind of see his trajectory. It's
Mhm.
like it took like 10 reviews before he gave an 8, like an 8. So, but he's also a strong proponent of like sevens are good times. Sevens are like worth your time, and this feels vindicating when other people just care too much about the nines and tens. So yeah, it's been a fun year, and then I can't wait for 2024 how it treats us with LE. At least the first few months, it's seeming like it's still gonna be crazy as this has been, but it doesn't feel like 2024 is just gonna be a crazy release year like this was. So I can't wait to see how 2024 treats us, especially everyone in the U.S. because a certain election is coming. So that will be a fun time to escape all the nonsense is gonna unravel in that year. So
Mm.
but enough of that, because this is the X Bottom Podcast, or gaming podcast that posts every Fridays from 2 p.m. onwards, God willing. Available on the YouTube channel Escape Gaming, as well as most audio services around the world. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links and the RSS feed at tinyurl.com/escapegaming. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. So, Paul, we've technically been playing the same games. So, we kind of teased it last week when we were just doing the Game Awards only episode. We've been playing Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, the game that came out literally the same day as the Game Awards.
Yep.
We both got... I stopped playing when we got the flying mount because I needed to keep playing the other stuff that we kept playing that I also reviewed.
You were required by law.
Yeah. Basically, every game that I'm going to talk about right now, I'm reviewing. Or I already reviewed 2. One review is live. You can go read it now. The other one's going live the same time that this podcast shows up, and then this game, Avatar, when I finish it, which I hope I do based on like I saw that how long to beat. I should have it done by the weekend, hopefully. But yeah, it's like Avatar is basically a new Far Cry in every way imaginable. It's like, yes, say all the jokes about, when you play a Ubisoft game, you play them all. You know what a Ubisoft game is gonna be like, what it's gonna do. But there's there's something to be said about particular set dressing and a tweak in approach that can make a well-worn formula feel fresh and exciting. In this case, a Far Cry game in a sci-fi style jungle with minimal HUD, a little bit more of a survival tinge, does a lot to reinvigorate like this kind of game coming from Ubisoft, because so many people do the Ubisoft style Far Cry game. Like, I mean, we made a joke of Horizon. Horizon is a Far Cry game. Like, if for all intents and purposes, it is one. So, there's like, and for a franchise that every time that I watch the movies, especially the second one, I was like, I enjoyed that, but they never, they don't linger in the mind. I feel this game kind of fits in that same ballpark. Is like, as I'm playing, I was like, this is actually really good. This is like really entertaining. The vibe of running through this jungle is super soothing in a way, because there's just something cool about a sci-fi jungle that's better than just a tropical jungle that the Far Cry series has way overused at this point. And how much that alone, and the movement of you being a blue 6 foot tall Navi or 7 foot, I don't know like how big.
I think it's like 8 feet.
8 feet tall, where you're like literally looking down at NPCs, which is so funny seeing it that way. When I've seen the other way, when sometimes cameras are kind of like in the crotch sides, and you see people that be taller than they seem like. If you play Killzone 2 or 3, that game had weird perspective issues where it felt like your camera, like FOB was in the crotch. Like if you were like, but in this case, it's the total opposite. It's like from high up there. But Paul, I think especially for you, this was a pleasant surprise, because you were not excited for this. Like,
not at all. And I will be the first to admit that I was so not interested in any of that. I was tired of the formula when they said, "Oh, it's Avatar meets Far Cry." I was like, "Are you kidding me? We're gonna do this again, basically, with another coat of paint, essentially." But not to bury the lead, once you get through like the first 15 to 30 minutes, which are admittedly fairly dull, because the entire thing, you have zero control of your character. It's just one really long cutscene of just watching
and a hallway
character grow up through hallways, boring stuff, which I get as part of the point, because it's supposed to give you that Fallout style vault, leaving the vault moment, which you get as you're running for your life from all of the craziness going down through this research station, essentially. And you're enveloped by this weird jungle that somehow feels more like, how do I explain it? It feels good to be in the jungle. It's not like this is a jungle and everything can kill me. It's like, this, I feel at home here, and I don't know how they were able to convey that so well, but I just felt like everything was enveloping me in such a calming way. I mean, we had the night sections with all the glowing plant life.
Yes, the purple glows of the jungle are so nice, especially if you have calibrated your HDR. If you have a TV that has great HDR, you calibrate it right, it just pops. It absolutely pops. And I feel the reason why this jungle works so much in comparison to like a regular Far Cry jungle, What's the name of what's the umbrella this show is under, Paul? Escape.
Mm-hmm.
This feels like escapism when you're like playing a jungle that looks like a lot like my backyard here in the Latin American country, like a Far Cry. It doesn't feel like I'm escaping. It feels like the real world is like invading my entertainment. So that's why I was like, I could never abide with that kind of jungle environment in Far Cry 6 because it reminded so much of that, despite my country not being quite like that. It's like it's so similar to everything like in Central America. The jungle of Pandora is like otherworldly. I love the floating islands. I love the aura, austere like presence this thing has, and on top of that, this taking advantage of the fact that this is one of Ubisoft's first new gen only games, because they have been straddling the line. Even Crew Motorfest and Assassin's Creed Mirage from earlier this year were like cross gen. So it's like it's still like their visuals were still kind of like, yeah, they look really sharp if you're playing on PS5, but they're still working on PS4 tech, on Xbox One tech. So it's like it was not quite pushing the envelope. I feel this one, especially in its fidelity mode, really pushes the envelope. Thankfully for the people that want it, there's a performance mode. If you've gotten so used to playing games at 60 frames, which is like, thankfully a lot of games are still trying so hard at including one, even if it's not perfect to include that. From a fidelity standpoint, PS5, like in still images, like it looks stunning. Like, the stunning detail of every little like iota of the screen. I mean, looking at it in my 65-inch, I'm like, yeah, this is like a stunner. I love taking screenshots of this. Like this Snowdrop engine, which is this game made by Massive, which is the guys that made The Division. They created that engine and they made this game on that engine. So it's like this is not made on the Far Cry tech. So you can definitely feel that there's a certain feel to the game that feels similar, but it's not the same tech. It's like it still feels like its own thing. And the beauty of it makes me very excited for what else Ubisoft can make now that they can only work on the new generation of consoles, which we're gonna go into year 4 now, Paul, which is crazy. It feels like it's been longer, but it's only been 3 years. But it feels by this point in PS4 and Xbox One, we had already left the PS4, PS3, and the 360 in the dust, and they held out more in doing cross-gen stuff because obviously pandemic and economy and all that. But this at least gives me hope, because what's the next game from these guys?
That's Star Wars Outlaws? Yeah,
Yes.
Outlaws.
Yeah, so it's like
Outcasts.
Yeah, because of Jedi Outcast.
Yep, that's the one.
But yeah, just think about it. It's like this is the tech that's gonna be running in that game. We already seen that game running at the Ubi Forward showcase from June this year. That was like the most impressive thing that I saw in any showcase this year. That one, because it was like, oh, it's like this feels like, are we getting closer to the dream of what we want? And in a way, when I knew that Avatar was coming out this year, my thought was like, yeah, I think I can find fun in this thing from a Far Cry perspective, because this is like Far Cry can be junk food in like a good entertaining way. Depends on how often you eat that junk food, if it's like palatable or not. But I kind of saw it as I hope this doesn't slip. I hope this comes out, because then that means Outlaws is gonna come soon, which is slated for next year. And seeing some of the tech in this game and thinking, man, we're already seeing like what that can do for the Star Wars game. That's gonna be really cool. So I feel it's like Ubisoft, which has been in rough spots in recent years. This year has definitely been the rebuilding phase. It's like they got a new coach in. They went back to basics. They're trying to like shed off a lot of the crap that they shoveled at us 2 years ago when they were like, yeah, we're doubling down on free-to-play stuff. Oh, NFTs. That was that same year.
Oh, you're right. Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
So we gone from that to now. And I feel review-wise, I checked the Metacritic. It's like it's set at 72 right now. Honestly, it feels very harsh, personally. Like, I feel the game is actually better than what the review consensus seems to have fallen on. And it's so funny is that this is one of the few Ubisoft games that the user score is actually higher. It's usually the other way around. Whatever critic score is like the user score is always lower. And obviously because that's how people felt about Ubisoft in a certain way. So it says a lot that now users are actually, no, this Avatar game is actually really, in fact, I think word of mouth of this one after it was done with the reviews has been of people be like, dude, if you're playing Avatar, it's like, it's a surprisingly good game. Like, don't sleep on this one. And I would certainly say so. It's like, if the IP alone doesn't really interest you, if you have liked Far Cry before, I feel like just from like a Far Cry game but better, personally how I feel it, it's like it's like a nice angle to try to approach this on. And I think you and I also have shared the same thing. There are some certain properties that just lend themselves better to games than like their other mediums. And I personally feel like even though I have no idea who these characters are because they all look the same, they all have weird names, I feel like I'm engaging more with like the James Cameron's universe that he created for this game through the game than I did with the movie, which is always just fun popcorn with amazing spectacle, and then you don't really think about it afterwards. And I did like Way of Water. I did not like the first one. So
And this, to exactly that point, essentially, running through that jungle, taking on these bases, doing all of the Far Cry stuff, hunting animals for their gear, it all feels like a very different kind of like feeling. And it honestly shocks me that Far Cry never did like a Native American led thing. Like it was a slam dunk to do Far Cry 5 with a specifically Native American thing. The whole America thing,
yeah,
the colonialism aspect, the fact that you're like
the
hunting
rural,
and killing animals to get their pelts and stuff, but like that's the whole point. It makes so much sense with the whole Navi situation, with the way you're doing things to like build yourself up, but for the sake of
And remember, the only
all that stuff.
the only time that they made an interesting Far Cry other than Blood Dragon was Primal, and that was like more caveman.
Yeah, that was not my style, that's for sure. But yeah, it's kind of that same vein where it's like you're really using the world around you to your advantage, where there's invaders that
this game
clearly don't.
Yeah, this game is more Far Cry Primal than initially seemed, especially early on when you barely have anything, but then it moves beyond just being Far Cry Primal. But it definitely feels like it takes the ideas from that 7-year-old game, because it came out in 2016, and put the Avatar coat of paint on top of it.
Exactly. That's one thing that I was actually going to get over to, is because while you start off with like purely bow, slingshot, whatever you want to call it, the mine thrower thing, then you get grenades, you get weaponry. I don't know if you saw the right after we finished playing together.
There's a shotgun.
You got the So you get like an assault rifle, you get a shotgun, you can pick up rocket launchers in the area, and each one does a specifically different thing. It's not just do the damage to the enemy. We found that out as we were playing together, that each thing does a different real
damage.
It serves a purpose, because you have bulletproof windows that can't be hit with the regular guns bullets, but you can punch through them with a bow. And then you can switch over to that. You can do bows are better for like the propellers on the helicopters and things, but then the guns themselves are really good for just shredding damage and stuff. And I love the gameplay loop when you're in like a really crazy firefight. It feels like I'm just playing part of the movie, honestly, where it's just like chaos. There's guns fire everywhere, people are dying. I have like a dragon thing that's flying around. All of the flying, like they make a lot of sense, and they augment things. Go ahead with the
and the flying. Getting to get those flying dragons. I forget the names and how cool that mission was. The Acorn, I think it was. I called mine Carol, because they had all this different like exotic looking names,
spelled but weird, isn't it?
No, it's Carol, Carol.
Oh my gosh,
that's what made it so funny. It was so funny to be like, I'm writing Carol. So being able to get a flying mount so early, especially because when we were playing co-op, because this game has seamless co-op once you hit a specific part of the story. I wish more games would just let you play co-op from the very beginning, instead of like leading into this arbitrary reach this point in the story for co-op to be enabled, which was a problem with Dying Light when we played that last year with Zach. Remember, we had to like speed through like the early areas so we could play together, and then we couldn't play together.
That was also a very entertaining story
back then, but and that was 2022, not this year. That was just crazy, but yeah, it's like we were talking back and forth, like we were like, this feels like the other side of the coin of Horizon, because enemies, like you have to hit enemies in weak spots. That's from Horizon. Also, bow and arrow combat in a Far Cry style setting, that's Horizon. And it's basically if you didn't like Horizon, like Mr. Paul over here, because he's a raging misogynist, I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, yes, but it's like this is basically kind of like that game through the Avatar perspective and from a first person perspective that actually feels more nimble than playing the third person Horizon in a way. That it can give you a little bit of those same thrills in a different perspective that is just as equally fun in my opinion. So Horizon obviously looks better because it's an exclusive. Of course, a PS5 made only game is gonna look better than a multi-platform game, but the Avatar game is not that far up behind of in like visual spectacle, and I know Paul he enjoys this more than Horizon. Obviously,
Yep. I gotta give it to him. I don't know what's going on, but I'm enjoying Avatar more than Horizon. Either of them, Zero Dawn or Forbidden West. I feel like Zero Dawn took too long to get into the actual
yeah,
fun
to
part
get
of the
good.
game.
Yeah,
Both of them you're still locked into exclusively like
one shot
just
weapons.
variations of bow and arrow. You have like the rope slinger and then
Hmm.
like your slingshots, which are all just
And
they
one thing,
feel
and like
exactly the same,
and like a burst staff that you get in the second game.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which like the melee, of course, they did a
Hmm.
great job boosting that up, but it didn't feel like there was any variation in any of that, and I
Hmm.
really appreciate that Avatar was like, yeah, so we're just gonna not do any of that. We're gonna be like, okay, you have like a couple of bows
Bow
that
and
do a
arrows.
great
Yep.
job, but also here's a freaking assault rifle, here's a
Yeah.
shotgun, here's a rocket launcher, here's some
There is
grenades.
variety.
Freaking go ham, kill
Yeah.
these white people. It's
Yeah.
just it's great. I love it.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that so much of that, like the gameplay loop is so varied because of that reason. I have four very different weapons that I could just switch between, and that's not even like the stealth aspect of it. The melee that ragdolls regular enemies, that is so satisfying. You slide up Apex Legends style and cold cock the crap out of this
Which, by
random
the way,
guard.
so much of the movement as you're running around this world has such a Titanfall vibe to it, especially the mission where you get the flying mount where you're going to the floating islands. It's like
Yep.
it felt like one of those like platforming challenges, minus no wall running, but it had a sense of speed that had that kind of like Titanfall vibe to it. It was just so funny because the early level of Titanfall 2, that's basically the training level, so much of like the environment of Avatar reminds me so much of that level that I was like, oh man, Titanfall. I'm glad that the spirit of that game in some way lives on somewhere. But yes, it's like Avatar has combat variety that Horizon doesn't. Obviously, Horizon committed to the bit of, yeah, you're gonna take down these giant robots with all the one-shot bow arrows because it's like it's all about the strategy of hitting the weak points, Dead Space style, to be able to bring down those robots. But at the same time, I understand like you would prefer a game that is not just that, and there is something to that because it's like variety is the spice of life, and I think Avatar does have that, especially because they're both the same thing. And obviously, whether you like the story or not is like up to you. Yeah, I feel like to me, I've come to realize that when I watch both Avatar movies, it's more about like the spectacle that James Cameron cooked, because he doesn't miss when it comes to like action. In fact, we were making the joke that we feel that the reason why people were so harsh on the MCU this year in particular was because Avatar: Way of Water kind of like exposed everyone, exposed to everyone what actual great CG is like. That then when they went back to the Marvel style, they were like, why does this look like trash now? Like it's like and these movies are supposed to be this expensive, and look at Avatar, like it just feels like he knows how to cook spectacle. He's done that since Terminator, all the way back, even to Titanic, uh,
Mhm.
and I kind of take that mentality. It's like, yeah, the story's just whatever in this, but it's like I love the world that's been built because it feels very honest to the world that I've seen in the movies. It feels authentic. The music, when it hits kind of like that Lion King style, kind of like the chants, is like, oh, cool. It's like, yes, like I really like this vibe. So yeah, I can't wait to play more of it. I'm glad that it's not an eternally long game based on the how long to beat that I saw it. That pleases me heavily because I know it's not going to be a 150-hour commitment like Valhalla was. But we're definitely going to talk a different kind of Valhalla today. But yeah, it's like so far, I feel I recommend it in an 8 kind of way. If I were to like score it right now, because I'm obviously this is going to be reviewed over at Season Gaming, I think an 8 out of 10 feels right for this. So it's like it's pretty
Yep.
good. They say pretty
Pretty
good, close to
much.
great. So
It's better than a lot of other things that I've played, and it's weird that I want to play the Avatar game of all things, but here
uh huh.
we are.
Yeah, and also fun fact: this is the highest reviewed single player shooter this year, or a shooter that has a single player component to it. This is the highest reviewed one. That is sad.
Really.
Yeah, that is sad considering the year. But hey, they had to notch a win. I would say Ubisoft getting Mirage and this to hit, and they've been pretty good. It's like they're not full on we're back, but it's like they're like it's slow steps. It's like it's like slowly crawling back from all the garbage that they fell into. That so much garbage that they didn't release a single game last year other than Mario and Rabbids. That's how bad it's been for them. It's like it's like Ubisoft like fell in harsh times, but it's like this gives me hope, and it's especially with Avatar. Is like I'm glad that they have not put their fingers in their ears and like be like la 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 la, like we don't care about the feedback to like all the memes that they received last year over their horrible UI. Playing this, I'm like, this feels like the UI people took this personally, because it's like this is such a clean UI, like from when you're playing and even when you're like navigating menus, that I'm like, yeah, they definitely like took that to heart. That stung to them. How much people were memeing their UI design last year when Elden Ring was coming in. It's like there is a sense of minimalism that they took from like Zelda and Elden Ring, even though it still is this is still their checklist formula. But I'm like, I rather that, because that's what Ghost of Tsushima did in 2020. That was still in the Ubisoft Assassin's Creed, old Assassin's Creed style formula, which also is similar to Far Cry, but they found ways to make it diegetic. The best thing about Ghost of Tsushima was how natural it felt moving to that world, and the way wind signposted you to go to places that left you more immersed instead of just seeing things. And in this one, obviously, like they have added the vision that you press the R1 button to kind of like detect something. I feel that's a good kind of like in between of them trying to move into more minimalist UI that fits this world, because I can imagine like Navis having their own sense to kind of like detect things, so it works for them. And I know you were saying that your TV was like, because everything was looking so bright, but I was telling you that it didn't, so I was like wondering if there was
It's
a messed up
weird
calibration for you.
I think it's more just in execution, because the field of view for that vision specifically,
Mm-hmm.
I almost wish it was further. Like it
Instead of
reached
just a
the edges
circle.
of the
Mm-hmm.
screen, or
Yeah.
even if like if you were looking the wrong direction, if it had just like a little indicator, kind of like those health things.
Uh-huh.
If there was just a little like marker to like, hey, you're not facing the right direction, go over here, because there's so much verticality
Mm-hmm.
that if you're not looking up or down in the right angle, you could completely miss where you're trying to go.
Yeah.
The early stages also really tries to funnel you, but you also have such good platforming that
Uh-huh.
you could kind of accidentally find your way in a space that you're really not supposed to be,
Yeah.
which means that you're trapped whenever you have a time limit. So that
Mm-hmm.
was a thing that happened.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, overall, like I've since cooled off heavily since then, because obviously you get a flying mount. That means you're
Mm-hmm.
never stuck anywhere.
Yeah.
You can what's the freaking Sky Legend of Zelda game all of a sudden?
Skyward Sword.
Thank you, Skyward Sword. You can literally Skyward Sword yourself off of cliffs
It's
and just
so cool, and
all
just like call
your
them at the
lost
last
way
minute.
to
Yeah.
it's great. It feels amazing. Just the enemies flying around. There's combat in the air, combat on the ground. You can heal yourself out of combat. It's very like hit and run tactics. There's a lot of stealth elements to it, but you can also go guns blazing if you're prepared enough,
Yeah.
or if you have two of us, like we
Yes.
did. We just freaking
If
shot
you,
the crap out of
yeah,
them from different
if
directions.
if you can do it co-op, this is such a fun co-op game. So fun.
And I
So
feel like it's not talked about enough that it is fully co-op after a
mhm.
certain point in the story, because you do
Yeah,
have to play it like a good
yeah.
3 or
That's what's
so
so
hours
yeah. That's what's so
to make
funny.
sure.
Far Cry 5 and 6 were co-op also. Those were the two games that because Far Cry 4 had the weird one where you could only do co-op for the bases, and you could give like a friend code or something, and they join you, but you couldn't do story elements. Five finally was the one that were like, no, if you have a friend, you can play the entire game together. And 6 also added that too. So these games are just so much better, and the best part is like it just feels nice to play one of these Ubisoft games that it's clearly not meant to be like a live service. It's just so clear that they have been like slowly walking back their live service ambitions that started like permeating every freaking game. Because remember when Assassin's Creed was like, yeah, we're moving to a live service Assassin's Creed Infinity, and they have so downplayed that now. Where it's like, now it's like, no, it's like, Infinity is just going to be the platform that's going to house all these games, kind of like what Call of Duty HQ does now. Which, by the way, is like, Call of Duty HQ ensures that I'm never keeping those games installed because it just bloats
Yep.
your, it
It
just
is
absolutely
way
eviscerates
too big.
eviscerates your hard drive space. But yeah, it's like they have really learned the lessons. They know that live services are a dirty world, and I'm glad that even though this developer made two live service games in the Division 1 and 2, this game they were able to do a single player game with co-op in a way that works, in a way that feels nice, more polished than I expect from usual from Ubisoft. I haven't seen like much the open world jank that I associate with their games. Is like, it feels like more polished, which makes sense. This game has been in development since 2016, which is wild because that's when this game was announced with the same developer. It's
They cooked, that's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, and you can see it. So yeah, it's like, I would say I would recommend it, and I hope that when I finish it, that opinion really holds up. But uh, you would have to wait until next year to hear if it has changed. But hey, if not, just follow me on socials. You'll see my review there. Paul, you still haven't played Final Fantasy 16 Echoes of the Fallen, right?
No, I actually downloaded the whole thing. I had
Mm-hmm.
it sitting there ready
Mm-hmm.
for when I had some time, and then the other thing that we're going to talk about came
Yeah,
out
happened.
instead.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had it queued up and I was ready, and
Mm-hmm.
then I didn't.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because this is, again, another situation where you play the better thing first.
Yep.
So, and we're definitely going to talk about
What
what
a
we're going to talk.
time
Yeah.
that is.
Yes, it's so funny how that happened to you again. But yeah, just to kind of like give a brief one, you can go read my review over at Season Gaming. I gave it an 8. To me, Echoes of the Fallen is like a brief microcosm of everything that Final Fantasy 16 does right and everything that Final Fantasy 16 does wrong. This game has excellent combat. Its spectacle is a sight to behold. It has amazing set dressing. I send you pictures of the big tower where you're gonna. It's like the sense of scale, and then when you listen to that Castlevania mixed with sci-fi music that Soken cooked for this thing, it's like, it's so evocative, and it's like a prime example of why they deserve winning the best soundtrack of the year, because Soken just is built different how he makes that music. And
Crazy.
yeah, especially with the combat scenarios, if you thought normal difficulty lacked challenge when you were playing normal Final Fantasy 16, brace yourselves. The CVU3, Naoki Yoshida and company took that personally, and they throw the gauntlet at you. It's like there's like a couple enemies here that will lower your health like so much quicker that you're gonna be like, oh crap. You have to be like more in your sense, because I don't remember dying too much or almost close to at all when I played like the main campaign. I also kind of stay ahead of the grind, and even if you really didn't need to. But that was just kind of like me. When you're giving a level, you're kind of like, I think you should stay ahead and just stay here for a little bit and just keep fighting monsters and monsters and monsters and monsters. Only a big dragon from like the hunts was like one that really gave me trouble, but that was like a side stuff that I had to look for. That was like I bet I was like level 38 and the dragon was level 50, so I kind of like intentionally challenged myself for that, because the game otherwise felt even. And obviously the challenge is in the arcade mode, in the higher Final Fantasy mode that you unlock after the game. But if you still have a save from when you beat Final Fantasy 16, which I did, you can access this, because this is slotting right before the fateful final moments. They basically pulled a Mass Effect 3. If you play Mass Effect 3 in its DLC, a lot of that DLC kind of was slotted before the final moment, so they kind of like pulled that off. And story wise, I feel like, again, I said, this exemplifies something that I really like about FF16, is that they do great lore. They really take especially with active time lore and all of that, they really took care of like making sure that Valistia feels like a really lived-in world where its lore is like approachable, especially if you want to dig into it with active time lore, and builds a sense of history in a way that you're like, oh, this looks like, what are all these ruins? Why is this like? Why are there robots here? So this game, like Echoes of the Fallen, really goes all in on the sci-fi stuff, and that works, and that works to its benefits, because you see more of that kind of enemy, and it just leads to an absolute mother effer of a final boss that is just clear. I can imagine when they were taking a little break when they finished FF16, they probably got an early copy from software to play Armor Core 6. They got to see Baltius, and they were like, how about we copy some of that ruthlessness to the final boss? And that final boss was a doozy. It took me like six tries to get him, because I was like, wow, it's like, you
Which
can like,
for Alejandro is unheard of, because even like the hardest enemies take him like 2 or 3.
Yeah. So, or unless you're the Elden Beast or Melania. Even Melania took me 45 minutes of just constant trying. But and overall, it was just fun. It's like, I don't feel like I feel the ending of this DLC and some dialogue said paints an interesting picture of what happens at the end of 16 if you kind of like try to slot it in. It kind of like it's just in the logic of how humanity moves on from the thing you rescued from at the end.
Yeah.
But it definitely feels like they're gonna put all their chips to the second DLC, Rising Tide, that comes out in the spring. That's gonna be longer. It's actually more expensive. This one was $10. That other one's gonna be 20, and they said that that's gonna be have even more enemies. Apparently, the Thornberries are coming back in the other DLC. There were no Thornberries in this game, and gosh, I've seen it. And apparently, there's like Thornberry Mother. I saw if you go back to see the DLC, it's like a massive female like Thornberry, and I can't wait to see how to try to fight those guys with this combat system. But yeah, it's like Final Fantasy 16 to me was a flawed gem. We're gonna talk a little bit more about that later. But it was nice being back. It was a good reminder. It's like I'm glad that I got to go back instead of just for something new other than just replaying it in New Game Plus. That I'm still kind of holding that playthrough from because I have such a raw emotional connection to this game that I feel like I'm not ready to kind of relive those emotions quite yet, and just going back a little bit, retouch that. But I was able to kind of refocus my mind into something different. But I really love that game. But here comes Sony Santa Monica. Last week at the Game Awards, they're like, "Oh yeah, you've been hearing all these rumors about DLC for God of War Ragnarok. Yeah, here is that DLC, and it's free." And then everyone was like, "New DLC, and oh wait, it's a roguelite?" I'm like, "Aw." So it's just a mode. Well, I mean, it's free at least. That was okay. It's not that big of a file size. Yeah, I can wing that. Yeah, let's. I enjoy Ragnarok. Obviously, I have been having many conversations all year about Ragnarok, about how I was so in love with that game last year, and through this year, I felt like that spark wasn't there, and I was like thinking, being left, I was like, maybe the game was not as great as I thought it was, because why am I feeling this? When I remember 2018 was stuck with me so hard. And obviously, I've talked many times about how 2018 was a special place in time for me as like the game that rejuvenated my love for gaming. It's why I'm doing this still right now, because that was the game that recharged me at the perfect moment and gave me hope for gaming. When we were like in the single player was dead era of EA, remember that? It was like, that was the game that felt like the counter program into that. So that's why I was like, yeah. Initially, I was like, well, I'm not that excited to play a roguelite because roguelites are not really my thing. The only roguelite that I really have liked is both Hades and Dead Cells. Those are like the two that really click. But I tried, what's the one that came out also? Is it Rogue Legacy 2? I think it's what's called. Yes. Or yeah, so Rogue I tried that one because it reviewed super high. I found it super hard. I'm like, I'm not really feeling this. It's like this is really not my thing. And Hades made it interesting because it's like, they really tied narrative a lot to your runs, and you're constantly like rerunning of that thing kind of like gave you even more narrative as you're trying to escape the underworld. And I'm pleased to say that Ragnarok really, the devs really played Hades. I can totally imagine they totally played Hades and based that on this thing. I cannot believe this is free. I beat this thing after 10 hours. I'm still playing it. I still want to play it because
it could have been like a $15 plus expansion
or 20.
I would have paid it after I found out what it was actually in it, because when they were talking about it, they were like, "Oh yeah, we just added a cute little roguelite game."
That's an epilogue to the story of Right, because they were kind of mentioning that, but it's like when they were saying that, but then the things that they were showing you was just the combat. It's like, okay, I can imagine. It's like, I like the idea of this game leaning towards one of its strengths, which is combat. Like playing Ragnarok is a blast. The thing that Ragnarok stumbled with was because it was such a long game, and it was like splitting its focus on both. You could play as Kratos or play as Atreus. There's all these cast of characters. There's like so much happening because they're trying to wrap up the story in one game instead of trying to do a trilogy, which it was something that at the time I really appreciated. But then looking back, because it made the game so big, it was hard to want to go back to it, especially because that game suffers through so many like pacing snacks like Iron Woods and all that at the moment on first playthrough I didn't mind because it was my first time experiencing. But you know, when some things are slow, you just kind of don't want to like re-experience them again and just kind of want to get to the good stuff. So
Mm.
So I was like, yeah, a mode that at least leans into the strength of Ragnarok, which was combat that was so much better than 2018's because of the added weapon, extra combos, like the added brutality, verticality, and all that. I was like, yeah, I feel that could be fun, but they are Santa Monica. They deserve an award for underselling of the year. They really undersold the work they did. People, this is an expansion. This is legit. Just not we added a roguelike mode. This is a legit expansion. Like what we had been hearing all year, this was it. When we heard the actor from Tier saying that there's more from him coming, this was it.
Mm-hmm.
This is what like this was the thing, and how they managed to tie a story that built smartly from the very end of Ragnarok, and already like these two God of War games are very introspective about Kratos, kind of like coming to terms of the man he was, and you kind of see it through the dialogue and his actions. I feel this is the first time that we actually see that being made text and being made overt. Because instead of hearing it, talking, getting the reference, you see the references now, and it's like
I love that. So the Kraken, not Kraken, the Hydra was God of War 2. That was the intro.
God of War 1. God of War 1.
1. Okay, sorry. But that was the start of God of War 1,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
start. Yeah.
Okay, so that I love the fact that we're going back to the entire like beginning of the series, a super inconsequential NPC that Kratos murders, and we have an entire emotional thread about Kratos dealing with the guilt of killing a random innocent guy. The fact that we finally come back full circle to like I've never seen a better, like, for lack of a better word, meta way for a character to look back on how terrible they were in universe in the 2000s when that was just the edgy side of what you did in games and go, man, I was a horrible person and I need to figure that out. And the fact that this whole DLC is Kratos goes to therapy. Like certain characters that I won't spoil are like metaphorically sitting him down and going, hey, you need to like, you don't have to excuse what you did, but you have to accept what you did to work past it. He goes through processing. He goes through like obviously I'm married to a counselor, so this is especially interesting to see like they're using actual techniques to go through this man's life and like bring it all up. There's like a whole thing where you I think it's like rapid eye movement. She's gonna kill me. RBT, I think is what they call it, where you kind of like you do something to stimulate your body, and then you keep remembering it so that it almost feels more real than when it actually happened. And you talk about the exact details of it. The fact that Kratos is going through the exact details of seeing these people that he betrayed and killed is super cool to just finally come to the other side of it and to see my dude finally almost smiling at the end of that where he's just content. This is amazing. And how proactively makes it all better.
Yes, that's the thing. I feel this is a DLC that makes God of War Ragnarok as a game better. Like I feel the ending, like the ending for Kratos in this thing as an epilogue feels even more emotionally satisfying than the tease that was left off at the end of just main game Ragnarok. How like that whole story was like threaded to the game mode itself, which was like going through Valhalla, and Valhalla kind of like compartmentalizing all his memories from his journey through the 9 realms of Norse and also his time in Greece. How Sony Santa Monica still like took personal God of War 2018 has little enemy variety. How they brought all the variety that included in main Ragnarok and went farther ahead and then made all the enemies that you faced in the original God of War trilogy in PS2 and PS3. The Cyclops, the Sirens, the underground guards that then jump in that have like the little blades, the Olympian skeletons with sword and shields, the harpies, all of that is like they bring them all back, bring up so many visual stuff that if you played some of those old games, you always get that. Holy crap! I remember this room. Like I remember this torture chamber. I remember this arena. I remember this boat. I remember this desert. I remember all of this, and I remember the statues from God of War 3.
Well, they did it. I remembered those after playing all of it
once. And
I played the entire series once, and I remember I was like, I know what this room is. Oh no, what are we about to do?
Yes, and then on top of that, the things that they added to the combat, especially something that you thought was gonna happen in the main game and it happened, and somehow near the end of the year, we got another press L3 R3 moment that was just so insanely hype
Had
that
one last little moment of just
yeah.
accept the truth. Click the
Yes,
button. Just, I don't know how much we want to talk about spoilers of it, but I'm sure
yeah.
people that are interested are going to find out eventually.
I
But
kind of,
just
because this is gonna be in the review around the year and wrap up that we're about to do. We can like save the spoilers for later in the show, but yeah,
okay,
just
yeah,
like
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So but it's like me that I've loved that this entire franchise all the way to the PS2 did that entire replay when we did kind of like that impromptu ranking of the games that I went and made an article of, because I had just played them. And I really love how this DLC finally feels like Santa Monica is no longer apologizing for those PS2 era games. Like, because yes, especially with Ragnarok felt more like they were more at ease of bringing a lot of those elements in, even referencing some of the PSP games. This is them being like, no, it's like God of War has a legacy. Its legacy is beyond just the Norse era. Like a lot of that and its personality is rooted in the Greek era, and I thought they did that splendidly in this one. That especially getting to experience this, just Kratos' focused story. That's all about that, of him finally coming to terms with the things he's been dealing with ever since he murdered the entire pantheon at the end of God of War 3. And he's now at a little bit of a personal crossroads, seeing a more hopeful future for him that he doesn't even want to grasp it because he knows what he has done. And this DLC kind of like touches on that head on, and that's touched through your gameplay scenarios as you're going through the different scenarios, how that all is perfectly married. It's like, this is the roguelike you want to have people play to at least kind of get into the idea of a roguelike. I love how malleable this is. If it can get too difficult, just dial down the difficulty down. If you're feeling brave, dial that sucker all the way up. This thing will like challenge you in ways that really exposes the depth of the combat of this game. That, you know how a lot of people like to say that Sony exclusives is like, they're just movies that you play, their gameplay is trash, or their gameplay is not as good. I feel God of War is one that has so much depth in its systems that I feel this DLC really brought that to bear. Even though you don't have all your abilities, I like how different runs give you the different options and you get to choose. Then you get to at least experiment. It's like, it's a nice way to really pare down the combat and show you what was there, that maybe when then you go play New Game Plus, because there's some really cool stuff that you can do now if you finish this thing, and if you haven't done New Game Plus. When it was so funny because you had asked me, man, this edition is so cool, if it was in New Game Plus I would go to that back in a heartbeat. And then you left the chat, and then I saw that, and I was like, oh no. And I was like, oh, look at this.
You shared it like 5 times. Oh man, but it's like it makes sense that like they have to have included it with all that work they put into it. But you know, sometimes it's like they
do all that work,
that, that it's like there's always a chance that they're just gonna like, no, it's just for this. We want to make sure we keep it separate. And I was like, all right, I get it, but that would be really disappointing. And I didn't want to get my hopes up. But finding out for sure that yes, you can use all of the new cosmetics, you can use the new rage mode, and just that feels so good.
And
to
again,
be able
Paul,
to do that now.
Free. How is this free? Like, that blows my mind. That is like, Sony is gonna charge us $10 for a roguelite mode for The Last of Us Part 2 in a month. This launching now, like, and free. As excited as I was for, because kind of like what I was telling you, is because we mentioned when the remaster was announced, it's like, you don't like the story of Last of Us 2 like I do, but you like the combat, and that roguelite mode at least kind of like lets you just enjoy the thing that you liked with probably a character you wanted to play as there now also. But it's like, yeah, it's just that, and obviously that was made because they needed to justify why they were gonna re-release a game that you can play at 60 frames now on PS5, the PS4 version. With this one, it's like, no, Sony Santa Monica even said, I want to and look at their announcement thing. The thing that they opened their announcement of this DLC is like, hey, God of War Ragnarok has sold 15 million copies. As a thank you, here's this free stuff. And that feels so nice because it's just even a throw. Because when you hear this, oh yeah, it's going to be a tiny throwaway thing, which, hey, I mean, it's free, but it's like, this was the expansion I would have easily paid for. The same expansion, I paid for the Horizon expansion we're going to talk about later. It's like, this kind of feels like that. They married it to a mode that now gives me an outlet to be able to go back to this game over and over and over again. Because even when you beat the main story stuff, which is really great, because they didn't skimp on production value at all, it's like it still has the same mocap cutscenes, a lot of dialogue, and all this. It's like the quality of this thing is the same quality that you expect from the 2018 and the Ragnarok game. It's like it's still of that same caliber, and it's all free, and that is like, if Sony Santa Monica probably bugged my house and they kept hearing me be like, man, maybe Ragnarok wasn't that great, huh? Because how often it was like, maybe I think I like this more, and they'd be like, hey, hey, you asshole, here's a free thing, and let us remind you why you did love this game, that you gave it your number one for last year, and why you love this franchise. Because this is just beyond me just loving Ragnarok. It's like getting to experience all of that. It feels like my love for the Greek area was kind of like well served with this thing, with the references, with its specific like incredible references even to the PSP games, and like the cutscenes that they were showing us and all of that. That this is, if you want to know what a love letter is like to give for fans, this is perfect example. My review goes out tomorrow. It's high up there. It took a lot for me to not want to give this a 10. I tell you, because it's like it's really like me getting to play the Final Fantasy 16 DLC and playing this afterwards is like, wow. It's like, what a, like, that made put in even more perspective the amount of work Sony Santa Monica put into this thing, that I still feel I can do stuff. I have so many cosmetics that I can still unlock. There's like pathways in different biomes, that because it's random, so I finally got to all 9 of them in like one run, because it's like that's how they randomize it for you, even though they keep something curated. So it's like if you get to a safe space, it's like it's still kind of like the same the same kind of like layout, but it helps keep a level of authenticity and kind of like handcraftedness to it, that sometimes roguelikes feel like they're just being procedurally generated, even if sometimes they're not. That this does feel like the high quality extension for God of War that I've been wanting. And I'm glad it just reminded me that Ragnarok was an excellent game, and I didn't need to be gaslit into thinking that it was not. I cannot believe how good it was, to the point that it's knocking to my top 10, which I'm going to reveal that next year. So, Paul, do you have anything to say about the finals? With the shadow drop from...
I have a few things to say, but I want to keep it brief. But I will say negative stuff first. It's really bare bones. I hate those default outfits with a burning passion. The stupid esports, like, what do you call it? The fleece and the really tight sweatpants look. It's like, the world is going to be doing this nonsense in that kind of outfit. And then the fact that they do not have a lot of weaponry and options right now. It's split between 3 different body type characters. The small characters are impossible to hit. The big characters are really hard to freaking kill. But then on like getting that out of the way, freaking awesome. The fact that the destructibility is back, baby. That was made by people that made Battlefield. You could just wreck shop. You got rocket launchers, you got grenades, you got mines, and you using any of that just blows a hole in the floor, blows a hole in the wall. If you need to get somewhere and you can't get to it, just disintegrate the obstacles in front of you. And in a way that doesn't feel janky.
And also in a way that doesn't feel janky, and it feels like natural to the way the map is designed and how the match flows. And how I see this, like, yes, it's bare bones, but I feel like they really honed in on trying to make sure the core of it was working, because it's like trying to make a multiplayer all about the destructibility of things takes a little effort, let's just say, especially because this is not EA, this is not DICE. So it's just people formerly working on there and trying to make that, they bring the destruction into like a more condensed thing, that I feel this game has amazing potential for the future of, like, as they build meat to those sturdy bones now. It's kind of like, I feel that for a foundational level, the finals really works. I played a couple matches before I was playing the, I went to dive in heavily into the God of War DLC, and thankfully it's 9 gigs. I can see myself going back to this. Like, it feels like a fun, let's drop in for like a match for this thing. And
that's what kills me. It's 9 gigs. That's it.
Yes.
What in the world? How did they do it? Like, I know they they skimped a lot on like the environments and stuff because all you
They
need to
don't-
do is like it's a virtual whatever, you just have your platform. But like even the background stage, it feels like you're in a decently
Yeah.
sized area.
Mhm.
Um, there's one other negative though. There's one map that's at
Yeah.
night and I cannot see anything. It's impossible. Anyway, but yeah, like just the fact that it's only 9 gigs, it's crazy. I'm just gonna keep it on my system, and if I ever
Mhm.
want to just go play something that's not Fortnite, that'll be quick. That's it.
Exactly.
Um,
So
yeah, so I'm just gonna keep going back to it and seeing what they add.
yeah, it's like I'm excited to see what the finals becomes, because this was very popular in beta, especially when they did like the closed alpha tests or like the open tests. It gained a lot of like following on Steam and all that. So I hope this builds because I feel like we're at a crossroads with shooters, and I feel people want more than just the Fortnite. Even though Fortnite has found a revival itself, but not because of its battle royale, but because of the things around it, like Fortnite Rocket Racing. That you played a lot of. I only played
I
briefly.
I played a lot of. It is. I mean, they did what they said they were gonna do. They're gonna make a crazy Hot Wheels style racing mode out of the Rocket League mechanics. And on the one hand, it's like a 70-30 for me, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
on one hand, it's really freaking fun to just turn your brain off and you drift around corners, you boost, you fly around, you just go crazy with all the weird options that you can jump through. And on the other hand, it feels like it is, how do I
Undercooked.
say it? Yeah, but it's like there's a low ceiling. It's like once you figured it out, that's kind of it. And some
Mm-hmm.
people are just faster at hitting the buttons. There's just like one optimal way to go through the thing, and the mechanics are really weird because I haven't shown it, but your car moves forward like it's an arcade racer, so it's
Mm-hmm.
like forces you to move forward, and it's really hard to actually turn around. So if you
Mm-hmm.
get hit or hit something and you end up facing the wrong direction, it is very hard to actually
Oh,
like get
I
your car
know.
to
Yeah.
turn around because it keeps trying to like keep you facing the way that you're going, and that is frustrating. Especially now that like once you get one mistake, you're basically at the back of the pack because everybody knows the maps exactly the same now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just this pack of cars all fighting the entire way. So does get a little bit frustrating after a while. So I played some today, still kind of had fun, but don't expect to get much further than like where your skill level really settles at.
Mm-hmm. And I can imagine why they keep building the mode because remember, if this is Fortnite, this is
Yep.
not gonna be the state of the game like a few months from now. This is just like the launch of this thing, like
That's
kind of
kind
like
of where I
Festo. Like
settle at, where it's
yeah,
like it's just going to get better. They're
yeah.
going to add more stuff, more cars, whatever. They're going to try to steal my money. But yeah, as far as Festival goes, which was the other of three permanent game modes that they added into this game,
Mm-hmm.
and we skipped over Lego
Yeah.
Fortnite, which is just Minecraft but associated with Lego, so you can put everything Lego into it, which gives you a lot more controllability than Minecraft. You're basically Tears of the Kingdom,
Mm-hmm.
but
In
it's
Lego.
all licensed Lego characters. And for most characters that you own for skins, they just give you a free Lego version of that skin,
Mm-hmm.
which I really respect because you could have just been like, oh, we're going to discount one of them for you, but you still have to buy it. But no, they just
Mm-hmm.
give it to you. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and then for the music side of it, oh boy. On one hand, it's like, this is definitely not as much my cup of tea, like at a glance, but at the same time, I have already seen a lot of really cool stuff out of it. And
Mm-hmm.
both like, the hilarious like skins meets they're singing some other song. They have the Buddy Holly song in rotation right now. So there's just like Goku rocking out to that kind of riff, and it is so funny to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do your emotes in the middle of it. It's just a perfect example of what you can really do out of it.
And
We
then later, and sometime this year, they're gonna add the instrument support.
Yes, instrument support, which is going to be crazy. I really hope that actually comes to fruition and it works like they're hoping. One other thing that I tried it yesterday. There's a separate mode called like Jam Session or Jam
Mm-hmm.
something.
Yeah. What
Apparently,
is it
it's
about?
just It's a free mode where you just sit there. There's several like stages or whatever. You go in and you can play. I think for the free side of it, this is where you really enjoy all of those music albums that you buy for real money, where you can play the instrumentals of that. And let me try to explain this the way that it's actually as really cool as it sounds. So I can be playing the drum version of a song.
Hmm.
Somebody can play the guitar version of a completely separate song. But
Okay.
when you hit square button, you can change the BPM, you can change the tune, the key it's in,
Uh-huh.
you can change the major or minor key, so you can literally jam with your friends like you're actually playing music, and it matches up more than you realize. Where I'm playing like the drums of a completely separate song, but because we're all on the same like beats per minute and the key,
Hmm.
it's like matching up, and you're just like
That's
suddenly
cool.
creating this new song. I know Seven Nation Army was one of them that he had bought it, so he was singing the vocals of it. I was playing the drums for something else that was free, but it like synced up the way it was going, and somebody ran over and they started playing their guitar and stuff. So it's just this free mode where there's like 50 people all in it, and they could just jump from one stage to the other, just be goofy, very Toontown-esque. But I'm honestly really impressed that they put something like that in there just to let you mess around. And
Yeah.
apparently, if you just sit there with the game playing, with you playing music, you can get a lot of XP. um,
For the
so
battle passes.
that was apparently it was patched already, but even
Yeah.
so, there's like quests where it's like play this for 5 minutes, play it
Yeah.
for 20 minutes, and then you get a bunch of free XP. So you just leave your character there,
Yeah.
and you're good.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
feel
so
like yeah,
that's my thoughts.
yeah, all these modes, I played briefly all of them because I was playing other stuff. Because I'm trying to see if I catch up. I'm trying to add some few final games into my list. Fortnite now has evolved into the metaverse everyone has been trying to pursue, but just kind of like this idea of like this hub that is will be grown beyond just as battle royale. That it can house all of this in a way that feels so natural and so inviting and so cozy. It's like so cool that is like no other live service game has evolved the way that Fortnite has. There is a reason why they're like the golden goose. And
hmm
even though they hit some stumbles this year after they switched into the new engine and trying to figure out new workflows and all that, the addition of everything that they added now is like paints a brighter future for this thing in a way that makes it more, because battle royale can be fun. We found fun, especially I like battle royale now more that it plays better. Obviously, we got bit hard by the skin by the skin but by the
Yep.
skin market where we lost a lot of money to that, like by me buying Boba Fett and the Invincible trio. Uh, but it's like yeah, there's just something like when Fortnite really clicks. Now this is me being Danny DeVito, the classic Danny DeVito. Oh my
I
god,
get
I
it
get it
now.
now. So it's like because I hated this game. I hated it so damn much back in 2018 when my brother was playing it the most, because at that point I didn't feel the game controlled that well, especially in console. I know on PC it's a completely different thing. Our buddy from our clan, Spartan, he plugs in a mouse and keyboard to his Xbox. He plays M and K when he plays Fortnite. If you look at his kill screen, if you get killed and see like when he plays, like you can definitely see that he definitely plays with something that allows him more speed, because that the UI for the controller felt more at home at PC back then. That in controller I was like, I feel like I have played better third-person shooters. Why is this so popular? I cannot like, I hate this. And them adding mantling, the sliding, the faster movement, the new engine, and all that, the new ballistic model was like enough for me to see. Yeah, I feel like I can have more fun now playing the battle royale of this thing, especially with zero build mode. Zero build mode is my mode. I cannot do build mode.
Oh
Like
yeah, no.
build mode is like it's that the super hardcore people are still there, and I cannot. There is no chance in hell I get to beat the people that build the Eiffel Tower so quickly. When all I can do is just aim and shoot. So zero build mode is so excellent for me. But this other mode is like it just like pertains like a bigger life for this game that makes me super excited, because what else could they add now? The sky's the limit. Creator mode already was like the sky the limit thing. When I got to play the the Squid Game thing that people added, the horror stuff that I got to play with Guns and OC. That time when I was like, dude, get into Fortnite. It's like really fun. That film, I found the chat. Remember when I was like, this
hmm
is moments before I sent you down the down this rabbit hole. But Fortnite's so cool now, and yes, it's funny to meme, but I feel like it's actually legitimately cool in a way that back then it was like it was the hip thing. Now it's like a legitimately impressive platform. And while I'll still remain bitter at Epic laying off that many people earlier this year, considering this is still like a very successful game, their game is still like something that I honestly astounds me. Like as a product that just keeps evolving and it makes us all these things that is just so inviting to play. Like, can't wait to play more Fortnite in 2024, Paul.
I can't believe I'm saying it, but I'm kind of glad it exists suddenly.
Yes.
And it's like all of a sudden it's like I see why it's such a, just from like a family standpoint, you see like kids and their parents playing games
Mm-hmm.
like Fortnite
Yeah.
together. And
Oh
like
yeah.
especially now with, you have racing, you have the Lego thing, you have the jam session. It's like there's 4 whole games you can play in that
Yeah.
game now,
Yes.
and more if you count all of the creative stuff. So it's like I got to give it its flowers
Yeah.
after all these years.
Outside Nintendo, I can't imagine a better family game. Like literally, currently. So,
Mm.
so yeah, like props to Fortnite. But enough of the games that we've been playing, Paul, because today is gonna be special. We're not gonna talk about the news because there's barely. I mean, E3 finally died. Like officially
Yeah.
official. We made that joke 3 times in this show back in 2020, 2022, and in 2023. But now finally they're like, yeah, we're not gonna pretend anymore. It's like it's dead and gone forever. Rest in peace, E3. It was like a death was premeditated. It's your own fault, and I'll forever remember the highs of that thing. And will always wish for showcases to reach the highs that E3 sometimes gave me. But we're in a different era. It's like we're in Jeff Keighley's world, which people were saying that. It's like it's funny that now, with how negative the Game Awards reception was this year, like how that show went, that now Jeff Keighley like is basically has monopolized the showcase the showcase game now. That I'm like, will someone rise up to try and put a competition to him? It will be interesting. It's like, has Jeff Keighley become the enemy? Like, did he was a hero and then he lived long enough to become the villain? Because people were like really angry how the Game Awards like went this year,
Yeah.
especially with the balance of so many ads. Dev's not getting enough time to be able to say some words. More time being given to menial stuff. So that's why a lot of people are like, oh man, now that E3 is no longer kind of there to be made fun of when Jeff is still doing his thing. Like, is he now like, he's got to be the target of so many people's ire because he's the only one doing this. Credit to him because he really pushed those things to exist when E3 completely crumbled in 2020 when COVID happened. But yeah, it's like, that's kind of like the only news of note that I can think of. So that's why I was like, as is tradition, Paul, we usually try to do a year in review of, oh, what was this year for us? And when we did it in 2021, I picked like 10 interesting facts or stories that I remember from that year. That's where like we talked about chaos, the showcase that we got to see, the gardening thing, us playing Halo, things like that. And then last year we just went through the big headlines of the year, like news-wise. I feel this year is not one to do the headlines other than the fact that probably the most obvious news is all the layoffs happening, Activision Blizzard completing that acquisition. It feels like that's all like the big news. So that's why I'm like, I feel this year, except for like year in review, I kind of want to go through all the games that I know you and I in any way, shape, or form played. Granted, this is not our top 10. This is not game of the year. That is for January. We're going to save that for that. But this is going to give us a chance to reminisce. Like, from the big games, because obviously we mentioned it many times. Paul and I, we created an Escape account where we both buy games because that's our way to cover games, because publishers still don't look at us unless I'm trying to get it through Season Gaming. And the couple times that it happened. But I just kind of want to go back through some of our memories with some of the games that we played, either positive or negatively, and just kind of like talk about them. So I have compiled basically a list of all the games that we played, because this year I know Paul and I basically played all of this in some way, shape, or form. So yeah,
almost all of it.
Almost all of it.
Less
And,
on my side than yours, but overall, yeah.
to give Paul credit, me that I always made fun of him never finishing games. Ever since I started bludgeoning that fact, ever since I got that private feedback over his 2021 game of the year, that he put a game that he didn't even finish by default. So ever since I told him that, like, he's made a conscious effort, and he has beaten way more games than I gave him credit for. Even like some big ones that I haven't even. Yep. I played more in bowling, but there's like a few that you're getting close to beating the biggest one. for this year.
Yeah,
I'm not even
I've
close for
probably
that
put a
one.
good 60 hours into it by
So
now.
yeah, so
But yeah, I like to think that I did a let's get down to business kind
mm,
of musical montage of
uh
trying to play games to finish them and not just giving up whenever it stopped being fun.
mm,
Because sometimes I would break through and find more fun after that point, or I would change my tactics, and especially if it was a co-op game, play with
mm,
you or something like that.
yeah.
And it helps that 2023 was a killer year for releases, and I didn't have to fight too hard for that.
Yes, and that's what's so funny about this year, especially for you in particular. There was a certain coziness to the games released this year because it was a franchise as we knew and we loved. So that inherently helps you push if you know something instead of trying to make a bet on something new. I still took bets on the newer IP, and I only struck out in a few in very select places. But yeah, it was like it was a varied year. It's like I will never forget this year. It's like after we were starving for 3 years, Paul, since 2020, since we started. That's what's so funny. We started the show in 2020, and then the pandemic happened, and then trying us to recover from that pandemic, and trying to see the industry recover from that pandemic, where we got the worst of it last year, where that really came to brunt. This felt like kind of like a cathartic release for us that have been like starving for things to play. It's unfortunate that they also had to come in a year where so many of the people that made a lot of these games lost their jobs. And that is something that is always going to be the asterisk that is going to be next to the claims that this is the greatest gaming year ever. It's a great release year for devs. They deserve better. So, and I hope that conditions for them improve now that economies are definitely going to start kind of like have to correct themselves with inflation is just out of order right now. So they tend to that inflation alone is why a lot of those layoffs happen. On top of greed from the companies taking advantage of that. So, but for now, we want to celebrate the games that we played, regardless if they were good or bad. Starting with the first one that we played this year, Forspoken, the game by Square Enix. My favorite memory of this is that this was my first review of the year, and yes, and this was I'm probably in the higher end when it comes to like the critical consensus for this game. I know a lot of people like to say that Forspoken is like should be like listed in the worst games of the year and all that. And I'm like, no, it's fine. This game is mid. It has some fun It had some fun elements. I enjoyed the magic attacks on this thing, especially when I got all of them. And I personally felt the best thing about this game was its late story because it really. By the way, this is gonna be full spoilers now, so
Yeah.
So
We're gonna try to keep it down to just a couple
a few,
minutes for
yeah,
each of these because we'll be here forever if we don't.
exactly, yeah. And for Spoken, I feel like the big twist that your Cuff was the villain all along was like a cool one, and kind of like the four bosses that you killed were like the things keeping that thing in bay, and kind of what it changed for it changed for the tone of the story. It made something that felt very jokey or was kind of like relying on the sass of the character into something that I was like, okay, it went epic at the end, and I kind of appreciated it in a little bit. But it's like obviously better games came out that year, but I'm glad that this was, especially what was coming around it. I'm glad I finished this one first. This started the trend, Paul, of you going to the best thing first and unable to go back down.
Yep,
Yeah.
couldn't go back. But Forspoken for me, it had a surprisingly emotional opener that I was kind of
Yeah.
interested in, and then it
With the
started to
cat.
just get rid of all of that because everything felt the same. I did not enjoy myself nearly as much with the gameplay elements as I thought. I love the platforming and the movement. I wish I had liked this game more. It seemed like it was exactly what I should have liked. And I realized one reason why the comedy wasn't landing is because it didn't have the cinematography or the editing to work to its favor to actually bring that home.
Yeah, and the thing is that you stopped at the worst part of the game. A part where I was like,
Right.
just get out of there. You're like, you're. I was like, just try to push through of that thing. Get out of that place because that's the dullest part. That's the part that looks the most boring because other parts at least look slightly more interesting. And then at the end of that, you're gonna start getting a little bit more momentum. But then at that point, the next game happened. Dead Space Remake.
And I enjoyed this game so much more. I am tempted to go back to that game sometimes because there's something about the creepy dead ship surviving as much as you possibly can in that silly little armor set, just fighting for your life, running for your life, the stasis, the telekinesis, the weird cult nonsense, the vibes.
Yeah.
It is just, it is solid. I've specifically voted for audio design, Dead
Or
Space
remake, yeah.
remake.
Mhm.
I hold to that decision because that is just some great atmosphere, and that is the end of my thoughts on that.
Yeah. This and the other horror remake that came later, slightly later in the year, it was like I struggle back and forth to think which one I like more, and I think one of the other ones is more fun, but one of the other ones is more technically sound. And in the technically sound, I feel that's where Dead Space remake like comes forward. It's like from a visual quality perspective, what EA Motive was able to do with this game was like excellent. In a way, like at least when it comes to playing the original and playing the remake, it's like they made the definitive version to replay this game, even with the slight things that they added and changed. With this thing, even a lot of the spirit of the original lives through on this remake, and the tightness of the controls, the tight, like the just kind of like you mentioned, kind of the sound audio quality, like getting to experience this immediately after the Callisto Protocol late last year, and coming into realization just how much superior the Dead Space remake, like Dead Space remake, was to the new game from the creator of the thing, was kind of sad, but just got to show that there was a lot from that foundation that, with a little bit of a cleanup and sharper and a sharper look, and a more build for the new machine's design, which it was like, because this was seamless throughout. It was like eliminating all the load times basically when you're going back and forth with all the areas of the ship, making it a more seamless thing. It's like, it was a pretty impressive thing. And I feel like in a year, if this year had not been as loud as it was, kind of like a 2019, let's say, or a 2014, this would have been like high up there in many people's rankings. It's like, it was really excellent. A GoldenEye remaster kind of got shadow dropped, and this was basically barely a remaster because it's just basically the N64 game being brought to the N64 and the Xbox. I got to play it and finish it on Game Pass. You got to try it a little bit. There's something really interesting about just running and spraying enemies in this thing there, because it's like it's just very soothing and doing that, and it was fun while it lasted, but it absolutely is not a game that holds up in the slightest. It definitely has a special place in people's hearts because it was the first notable console FPS for so many people in the N64. So
yeah, and I see why it was so loved, both because it was attached to like a known license, but
yeah,
like just the solid moving around and just gunning everything down,
the music,
the physics, like the glass breaking, the bullet holes in the wall, like it felt like you'd really like made a mark on that hallway as you shredded through people. But it's also absolutely held to its really bad objectives and system of getting through these weird maps, and sometimes failing for not really explaining what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. It's archaic to a fault. It's like a game that you really need to be exploring and all that. So I have this is one of my father's favorite games ever. So I have that nostalgia holds it for me, and I'm glad that there's a way to play it. At least two ways to play it. I would say the best way to play it is definitely over on the Xbox side, because trying to play this on the Nintendo Switch Online, even though that's the only version that has online play because of the weird ways that Nintendo was able to program the Switch Online to be able to do like local multiplayer online or things like that. Like the Xbox version doesn't have that, which is so funny. But the Xbox version just controls better, and it's over there on Game Pass if you want it. So that was a fun one. I like that playing that made me go on that Bond binge of trying to watch all the Pierce Brosnan Bond movies, and then rewatched all the Daniel Craig movies. And that was also a time when I did that. I went to play all the PS3 versions of the Bond games that I had. So it was one of those that if there's new games playing, why are you playing old stuff? And then we got I forgot of one game that also came out around this time.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, because So then we got Hogwarts Legacy, the highly successful, the best-selling game of the year. It already has been like counted that with the sales of Modern Warfare 3 right now. It may actually come second to this. So Hogwarts Legacy will probably be the first time in the United States that a Call of Duty or a Rockstar game is not at the very top of like a year-end thing, since like Call of Duty became like a big thing.
Crazy.
So yeah, Hogwarts Legacy, the long torture development in development RPG of the Harry Potter universe, developed by the guys that made the Cards games and the Disney Infinity games. This was a game that to me was like I held it in high esteem, specifically because of its production value. Because for a multi-platform game, the quality of like how they recreated Hogwarts in its fidelity and its authenticity is the kind of thing that I wanted to see. I want to see more from licensed games going forward. From a gameplay perspective, it was definitely very basic, and depending on how big you were a Harry Potter fan or not, you would either accept some of the liberties that it took, specifically with a specific magic that it's a unforgivable sin in the universe that you can use kind of freely willy when you get it, which is weird. But for a studio that their first, like when you look at the pedigree of what they did before and then you saw this thing, was like, to me it was a mighty step up from where they were coming from, and I want to see if they can keep improving more. I also have to caveat this, that I fully played this thing 2 months later after he got patched. Paul was the one that got to play this like right at launch, and the things that I was gonna do that, unfortunately the Metroid Prime Remastered came out, and I was like, just to kind of jump around to that one before we jumping back to like Hogwarts Legacy. It's like, why I had to jump into the Metroid Prime Remastered. You can go look at our reacts to the Nintendo Direct for February, which is probably my favorite. Yeah. Yes.
Big gaping mouth open Alejandro pictures that I took.
Yes, because it was like, I love these games so much that I was like getting to play them modernly, and it was shadow dropped in that same day. That's why I was like, sorry Hogwarts, but I gotta like cover this. And also kind of like, that was what I was using to build my repertoire as like a reliable reviewer for Season Game. I would be like, hey, something came out, I'm gonna jump into this and review it. So that's kind of why I jumped into that. And then I left you and Sebastian to kind of play this game, because I invited him over to kind of come in. Because I had played early on, I was like so impressed with it. I will never forget that episode where you guys literally just like took the whip out and just like lynched this game to it, like into oblivion in a way that I was not expecting. Like I was not expecting, like when I thought we were gonna celebrate this game when I brought Sebastian in, and I was just not expecting the depressing slog that was that conversation.
It was rough, and there's a part of it that was a little bit harsh at first on my side of it, but I do hold to some of it that it, like, the more you like, and I think that was what I said, the more you know about Harry Potter's universe, the more frustrating that game is. And where to you, who like didn't have that same connection,
I've seen the movies. I've seen the movies.
You enjoyed that side of it, but like, of course, the movies don't delve into like the actual rules of the world. So whenever like the fact that they broke so many of the rules that they established in their own books, much less all of the other stuff that's still written by the same person, like they couldn't keep their story straight. For Star Wars, I understand, because it's all written by different people, but that was one big thing for me. And then also just after the initial exploration of the Hogwarts itself, the overarching area was a lot less interesting to go through. The jump from one thing to the next, the fast travel system was a little weird, I think. I didn't like the flying. I like the dueling. I loved using the dark arts. That was really fun. But yeah, it was just one of those. It wasn't as bad as I said it at first, but I still think it was just from outside of the game mechanics itself, it was not as much of an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, I think I was definitely more impressed with like its recreation of Hogwarts, and I feel like its outside areas definitely got more impressive with the season changes. I enjoyed the Sebastian quest, the dark, that was all about like the dark arts. I thought that was like an interesting kind of like a slippery slope of someone trying to do things that are like unforgivable for like a specific reason that seemed honorable at first, and then you can kind of like approach it in a different way. Obviously, this also that I feel that those kinds of quests would have been even better if the game had committed to an actual morality system that they came somehow like chickened out of not doing it. You could easily see how that would have worked, but as a sense of place, I feel like Hogwarts, like as a recreation, did it better than most games this year, like especially from that production value perspective. And it's clean now, because then when you played, I remember what happened. You right before we recorded, that's the point where the game started bugging out more on you. So you kind of brought that in, and then obviously Sebastian also came in super harsh on that, and they were like, that podcast will always be one of my bigger regrets. That I wish I had been like a third voice, like a third official voice that understood things to kind of try to balance that out, or at least see if I could like compliment or even see it. Because then after I got to hear you guys like drag that game through the streets, and then when I went back to it, I was like, I had no idea what you guys are talking about. I literally that was my thing with that game. So obviously like this game was never gonna get its dues, especially with the controversy surrounding its author. I feel the developers really tried their best to try to distance themselves from its author, and try to like emphasize that this brand could potentially like outlive its connection to its to its author. But that tends to be very that's a slippery slope. So for some people it's fine, for some people it's not. But I feel I want to give Avalanche Studios like credit, especially because I know where they come from. Like this being like their first big thing after like those smaller cards games, Disney Infinity and all that. This is a massive jump, and if it wasn't perfect, a sequel could be even better, because I do feel that there's a solid foundation there. Whether there will be a Howard's Legacy 2 with WB Discovery and the David Sussel and be like, we want to double down on live services, we don't know. But it's like, I would hope someone would be like, dude, this is the best selling game of the year, there was no need for live service, let's not get there, let's not go there. So yeah, and then with Metroid Prime Remaster, you bought it late. When I think you finally got to buy it when you got there to North Carolina, right? You got to find the physical version. So
yeah,
you played it briefly, right? If I remember.
We're talking about Metroid still.
Yeah, we moved to Metroid now.
Yeah. So I actually think I downloaded it. I tried buying it physically, and they didn't have any copies. But yeah, so I downloaded that and I played like the first area-ish, and I was enjoying myself. It was nice. And then more stuff was going on that I just couldn't keep playing the game. But part of me does wish to go back to it, especially because I never ended up putting it on a big screen, because at that point I was only available to play it on my handheld. And I think that that's a game that would really benefit from me playing it on a larger screen. Yeah.
Yeah, especially because for Nintendo Switch in particular, this game is actually super stunning. That was kind of like that was my thing that impressed me the most, because this was already a stunning game back in the GameCube in 2002. The fact so much of that art style that lived on in Halo 4 and 5, because that's where the artists moved on from when they left Retro Studios. How much that whole style like bumped into high definition was like a nice reminder of that Nintendo used to be a company that you could see cutting edge games, at least from technology, at a certain point, before they picked their own lane and they stuck with the Wii and SD, while PS3 and 360 moved headfirst into HD stuff. So Metroid Prime Master was a nice reminder, and I was glad that that game finally became available in modern platform. Like, I will always keep like beating this same drum, like keep beating it over and over and over and over again. Nintendo just bring everything from the GameCube now to the Switch, so I can just put my Wii away, have everything there, make the Switch kind of like your all-encompassing Nintendo thing. Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, I know you're there. I'll await you. I'll forever await you for you to show up in the Switch. That will be forever the meme. Yes, Paul. We got breaking news from Naughty Dog. I'm gonna read their statement right now. Yeah.
Okay.
An update on The Last of Us Online. We realize many of you have been anticipating news around the project that we've been calling The Last of Us Online. There's no easy way to say this. We made the incredibly difficult decision to stop development on that game. We know this news will be tough for many, especially our dedicated Last of Us factions community who have been following our multiplayer ambitions ardently. We're equally crushed at the studios. We were looking forward to putting it in your hands. We wanted to share with you some background on how we came to this decision. The multiplayer team has been in pre-production with this game since we were working on The Last of Us Part 2, crafting an experience we felt was unique and had tremendous potential. As the multiplayer team iterated on their concept for The Last of Us Online during this time, their vision crystallized, the gameplay got more refined and satisfying, and we were enthusiastic about the direction in which we were headed. In ramping up to full production, the massive scope of our ambition became clear. To release and support The Last of Us Online, we'd have to put all our studio resources behind supporting post-launch content for years to come, severely impacting development and future single-player games. So we had two paths in front of us. Become a solely live service game studio, or continue to focus on single-player narrative games that have defined Naughty Dog's heritage. We're immensely proud of everyone at the studio that touched this project. The learnings and investments in technology from this game will carry into how we develop our projects and will be invaluable in the direction we're headed as a studio. We have more than one ambitious brand new single player game that we're working on here at Naughty Dog, and we cannot wait to share more about what comes next when we're ready. Until then, we're incredibly thankful to our community for your support throughout the years. What a shit show. Holy crap.
Their big thing that they have been hyping. People wanted this justifiably attached to Last of Us Part 2 because that's what it was for the first game.
Exactly.
And they were like, no, we're not going to do it because we're making our own standalone game for it. And everyone was like, okay, I get it. And then, how long has it been since Last of Us Part 2 again? That's 2020.
It's 2020. 2020, yeah. 2020, middle of the pandemic.
That is about to be 4 years. And for a mode, not just like a game, but they really overstepped. And I see now it is trending.
It's trending on Twitter, right?
Yep.
But we haven't had a breaking news like this happen, but dude, they announced, because in 2019, when they put a date for Last of Us Part 2, that's when they announced that there was not going to be any multiplayer. Then the fans decried. They were like, wait a minute. You didn't say you were not going to do like a multiplayer. We were expecting that to be in the package because that's what it was in the original. And then Naughty Dog afterwards, they were like, yeah, we hear you guys, but don't worry. It's like the team that worked on Factions is working on something. It's going to be really cool. And everyone at the time thought, okay, it's going to be a mode that's going to be added post-launch to Last of Us 2. Then they were like, no, we got very ambitious. Now it's turned into its own game. Basically, how they justified it was that Uncharted Lost Legacy also was DLC, that they got too ambitious. They were like, is this actually its own standalone game? And in that case, it worked. Uncharted Lost Legacy is awesome. But finally their ambition bit them in the ass. How many years of R&D, how many years of development like they put into this thing for them to come into this realization that they needed to either become a live service studio to keep this supporting, instead of just being like a mode like we used to have. Just have the mode for people to play. There's no need for it to be like constant investment and all that. It's like, man. And you wonder why I say that Insomniac and Santa Monica are better studios currently. So, hey, but now I understand why more than ever they wanted to release that remaster. They gotta need the money. So, I feel that it's fitting that we took a turn for the slightly negative because the next game was Atomic Heart. So,
let's move through maybe some of these we can decide that are just not worth talking about much. Yeah,
Atomic Heart, that was a game that was the one that got away from me, because it was like I signed up to review for that one because someone asked, but they didn't give code, and that's kind of where I learned that if we're not given code over at Season Gaming, we're not in obligation to really review something. That's kind of like out of the goodness of our heart if we want to like post something. And Atomic Heart, I was just not feeling it. It was like the idea was so cool. The vibes were
been great. It should have been great, and that's what we got, and it was trash. All right, Destiny 2 Lightfall, what you got?
I was so crestfallen. I was so excited for Destiny 2 Lightfall. We loved the Witch Queen the year before. We had a relatively good live service year in year 5 with this.
The trailer for it got me back into Destiny, but with like the talk about it got me really into it. And then when I saw the trailer, it was phenomenal. And this one was. The trailer was great for it, and then the game came out, and it was kind of nothing. And they were like, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's going to be all the seasonal content. It's going to explain the entire story." And I don't think we ever really got what we were looking for out of that.
No, unless you kept going to the containment to keep hearing like lore. It was constantly. Like, it's clear like
what we're about.
Yeah, Destiny 2 Lightfall ushered what it's clear for many is the worst year ever for this game. Like the absolute worst year ever. Like sentiment came at an all-time low. That even a good season in Season of the Witch, the one that launched the same day as the reveal for the final shape, it had legitimately good new ideas. And it didn't matter because sentiment has been like really negative. And then on top of everything that had been happening with Bungie with the recent layoffs and kind of like the health of that studio, whether it's like if they don't hit certain earnings parameters, they could be like fully absorbed by PlayStation. And then what could become from Bungie that they decided to sell off to PlayStation because they were so ambitious of wanting to do movies and all that. And Sony wanted someone with live service expertise, and they got one whose game is having trouble being sticky. And it's so funny. Bungie was the one that told Sony, hey, The Last of Us Factions is not sticky. That was so funny. So this cancellation we just read, it's so funny that the Bungie may have been the one that started the ball rolling and be like, hey, yeah, this thing's not gonna last how you built it. So, and to me, the fact that the campaign was so disappointing, man. Do you remember the Witch Queen campaign, Paul? How great that was, and how the good vibes of that campaign like carried us through an entire year.
It was
That
so
was like,
good. It was so weird and
yeah,
creepy, and I loved it. And it felt like an actual like end to the story almost.
mm-hmm.
And then they were just like, "Oh, but wait, there's somebody behind
Yeah,
the Witch Queen
because
herself, Savathun."
that's what it was. The Witch Queen was a nice like build up crescendo to like something that had been building for a couple expansions. That's why it was so great. And then Lightfall, unfortunately, the Lightfall we got is not the Lightfall that was originally announced in 2020. So it's like whatever that was announced is the final shape, and now all eyes are on the final shape. And my thing is that I still have enjoyed a couple things from Destiny this year. Doing the Crota's raid was good. The new dungeon is amazing. The one from a couple weeks ago, that's a very Dark Souls. With the one with the sidearm that has rockets is like a few times this year I'm reminded why I've stuck with this game for so long. But Lightfall has just not been a good one. So you didn't play Dead Cells Return to Castlevania. I did. I at least got to finish a full run in order to unlock the Castlevania stuff. I tell you, the way they do Castlevania was perfect. The vibes, coloring, the enemies, the challenges, all funneled through the Dead Cells systems. Really, really impressive stuff. It was such a cool expansion for Dead Cells, and I wish you liked Dead Cells a little bit more. I know they added adventure modes and kind of like assistant mode to make the roguelike nature of things easier. So that's yeah. So one day, hopefully, yeah.
It seems like a roguelike that I would enjoy. Same thing with like Hades.
Yeah.
There's like the exceptions. It's just
This one's side scroller.
General
Yeah, this one's side scroller. Remember,
frustrating
yeah.
nature of it can wear on me. But yeah, the Castlevania side really got me kind of wanting to, but
yeah.
In the end, there's too much other stuff to play.
Exactly, yeah. That one was like that was the one sole indie game that I really dedicated time for because it came in right as I was waiting for Resident Evil 4. That Resident Evil 4 to me, this starts the ball of like the onslaught of amazing releases that we got in 2023.
True beginning.
This one was a fun one because this one came in right as you had just moved to your house or where you're currently at, and you didn't have internet, so it was like
nope.
You had to figure out ways to like connect it to like your data, so that it could like play for like an hour before it would ask you to be like, oh yeah, you need to check into the internet because you have kind of like the secondary account of the escape thing where you have to remain online to be able to play, but. That's a funny part for hearing from you, but Resident Evil 4 was awesome. I knew it was going to be great because obviously, I mean, Resident Evil 4 is one of the greatest games of all time. I think what's interesting for this one is that you had no real expectations for this one, which I didn't understand. I was like, this is like one of the very best Resident Evil games, and you playing that reminded you of that, especially the ways that they improved upon original Resident Evil.
I feel like the moment, I'm trying to remember the exact moment I got really into it.
The demo.
Of course, it was like right the beginning. Well, yes. But I'm saying like in the grand scheme of the storyline, I think it was probably the first time I got to feel how good the headshots felt and how good the roundhouses were. Because that's demo. Like the bread
the demo.
butter. Yeah, the demo. Exactly. But I just... Because I remember seeing the trailers and I was like, okay, cool, Resident Evil 4, yeah, I'll turn up, whatever. But it was same thing with Avatar, honestly. It wasn't until I sat down with it in my hands and I went, oh, that felt good. Okay, I can keep playing this. And then I went into this stupor where I had to keep resetting my mobile data every once in a while, make sure it would keep me logged in to the account so that I could keep playing the game. But because your internet provider like delayed you for an entire month, right? For an entire extra month because they couldn't get their act together. But I'm not going to go into that today. You can go back and watch the video on all of that. So yeah, Resident Evil 4 was just awesome, a great time, and exactly what I needed at that time with something that was technically not needing to be online, but also just really fun, and I could just keep replaying it over and over again because I did not have a lot of options.
Yes. While the Dead Space remake obviously looks better, or the fact that that's a new gen only game and this was a multi-platform game, was like Resident Evil 4 was the one from the two that I was like, if I want to replay one, I'm leaning more towards the RE4 things because it's definitely more action. It's more focused on the action. Obviously, Death Space Remake has this action, but it also has that oppressive claustrophobia to it that you can kind of counteract by the fact that they also give you a lot of power to try to counteract that. But RE4 is definitely more of an action movie in that regard, and it has its creepy elements. But yeah, this was a game that I beat 3 times in a row because it was just that addicting. The loop that they found that they were able to build into this thing was like so cool. And as a kind of primer of that we were waiting for other stuff that was coming imminently, was like I knew Resident Evil 4 was gonna be so good. I was not expecting it to also be even that good, to the point that I feel it stands toe to toe with the original one. Though unlike Death Space Remake, I feel there is still value in playing the very original Resident Evil 4 game in a way that this one hasn't completely supplanted it in the way that Death Space Remake did. And I would say playing the DLC with Ada wasn't that great. And
I don't want to be that person that was harping on the voice actress, but she was not bringing it. She was reading that off of a prompt, and it wasn't. I was not feeling it from her compared to everybody else who was just knocking it out of the park with their energy.
Yeah, and her DLC had a few moments, but at the start of that DLC was very rough, and also me playing it way later until I had my muscle memory kind of like all completely gone and different. Kind of made that DLC not be the home run I was expecting it to be, but at least the base Resident Evil 4 thing is one of the best things I played this year. Horizon Forbidden West Burning Shores. This was one that you were intending to try it at least because I had told you some cool stuff that happened there, but the file size and the fact that another big game was like around the corner kind of like stopped you there. Horizon, it was always going to be the franchise that I like in the moment. I appreciate its beauty. It does interesting stuff lore-wise, story-wise, and especially one of the most incredible spectacles of anything this year with like a big, massive Leviathan monster that you see in the far-offs and some of the and kind of like the skyboxes you see. You get to fight one of those things, and seeing the scale of that thing was like made the DLC worth it for itself. It's just doesn't linger in the mind when then you have other stuff around it. And this is something that maybe you will eventually try it if we ever get a Horizon 3, which obviously we're gonna get because Forbidden West ended in such an obvious cliffhanger, and this kind of just teed that up more. But I like Forbidden West. It's just that now I have come to terms with that Horizon is just not gonna be it. You know what I mean? It's like it's a series that I really like. I will always like it. It just doesn't stand with the greats. It's always gonna be kind of like a tier below, even though it doesn't look like that. Its technical proficiency makes it seem like it's bigger than it should be. But immediately afterwards, we got Star Wars Jedi Survivor. That was my most anticipated game coming into the year because of how early we were gonna get it. And this was gonna be, and this was one of the few delays from this year from that we knew of the day coming in, and it got pushed a month because it was supposed to be in March, and then it got pushed to April, the end of April, like leading into May. Remember, we did our spoiler cast because we blasted through this game right on May 4th. We got to record that.
That was a good time, let me tell you. I know my return to Jedi Survivor really knocked it down a few pegs, and I was super not satisfied with how things kind of played out technically and mechanically, but at the same time, it was still a really solid game, and in another year, it would have swept. It was really understated. It was the last Jedi of the series because that's going to turn some weird heads. But at the same time, it felt like it wasn't exactly what I expected at times. But it was also really like I respect it for what it did.
When we recorded the spoiler cast, at that point in time, you said that this was your favorite game of the year. At the time, at the point, yeah. And do you remember at least what it felt like playing it at the moment? Can you like compartmentalize away from your return that was super buggy to like to your time back then? Like
I 100% could. I remember so vividly the intro. First of all, Cal Kestis is one of my favorite Jedi out there right now because he is so hardcore with the way he operates. The man gets himself caught, gets like put in front of this dude, snatches the lightsaber out of the guy's hand, just not caring at all the situation that he's in. He's got this crazy heist thing set up. Everybody freaking dies after that
Mhm.
point. He grapples with the dark side the
Uh-huh.
whole time. Grapples with grief. He's dealing with some really difficult stuff. We get a connection to the High Republic era.
Mhm.
We're going through all of these cool planets. We're seeing Jeddah in it's a new way. A lot of these other planets going on. I love the five styles, the way that it actually changes the lightsaber the way it is.
Mhm.
I love that you could just change up completely how the game operates by changing the way you play the game, with the style and everything. I love the cosmetics, fantastic. The outfits, the hairstyles, just so cool. And then, of course, the ending, as we talked about, full spoilers, the fact that one of your best buddies
Was
betrays
the
you, who's
villain. Mhm.
actually a Jedi as well, who decided to go a very different route. Cal doesn't actually fight his dark side urges, he just learns to live with it. You
Mhm.
lose some really important people to you, and it just ends after you get revenge in the coldest way ever, where you like trick this dude's jetpack and I think you like break his blaster in the process
Uh-huh.
of like grappling with him. He goes to shoot at you, and you think in every other Star Wars thing, it's like, oh, now I'm gonna finally talk to you and win with my morality.
Oh.
He just shoots him in front of his daughter. It's
Mhm.
crazy.
It goes
But
full
yeah,
Western. It just like the ending
yeah,
of the end of Jedi Survivor goes so intimate and so Western in a way that was like the complete antithesis to the super highs of Jedi Fallen Order.
yeah.
Jedi Survivor was an improvement on Jedi Fallen Order in so many ways. It was like, especially around the time that we were talking about Howard's Legacy. I felt Howard's Legacy at the beginning, when you compare to Jedi Fallen Order to the beginning from like a production value standpoint, is what I wanted Jedi Fallen Order to be. And then Jedi Survivor was kind of like that big step up of they finally got the money. It's like you can definitely see that Respawn tried to put even more money and effort into
Mhm.
into the sequel and the bigger environments. This is the closest we've gotten to the open world Star Wars game we want, but it's still quite not there yet. But
Yep.
it's like the
We're
bigger
gonna
hub
get
worlds. We're,
something.
we're getting get close to that. Kind of like you were mentioning, the combat sequences were like so phenomenally tuned. Like the improvements to combat were just like you felt them to the core. This one, Jedi Survivor, was one of the first times that I had like that crisis of conscience. Like, do I like this more than Ragnarok or something like that? And like me compartmentalizing that in my mind. And I do know that the one thing that I prefer from Jedi Survivor from compared to Ragnarok is that there's less frills to be able to do cool stuff in Jedi Survivor, unlike in Ragnarok that you need like the all the stats, the armors, the loot, and all of that kind of like can really add extra friction to the fun in a way that wasn't. So Jedi Survivor was like, it's interesting seeing this as an antithesis to Ragnarok because it's like from a God of War director too, the guy that made God of War 3. And Jedi Survivor at the time had what I said was probably one of the coolest action sequences I've ever seen in a game. The one with the big drill
Yep.
and you're floating through
And then it was
the
completely
portals.
demolished by the
Yeah.
end of the year.
Yes.
Which honestly brings to mind, with the time that we have, I feel like we need to make some
Yeah.
broad strokes on a
Yes.
lot of these releases. So what if we like just picked like a handful each out of what we have left out of all of these, and we kind of like run through it?
Yeah, let me see the time. Yeah. So that was the last thing I wanted to say. Jedi Survivor had the coolest action sequence at
Yeah.
the time, but then it got severely like, how can I say that? Yeah, it just got severely dethroned. It's like I feel this was a victim of time. I feel Jedi Survivor had it come out in 2022 when I originally heard the rumor it was coming out. Remember, I put it in my most anticipated that year on Faith, and then I was like, no, it's a 2023 game. It got buried, but hey, IGN just crowned it best action game of the year, like from all of them, like and
Gutsy move for them, but all right.
yeah, yeah, they won there, especially considering the year. But I gotta thank Travis for that. He pushed hard for that one. He loves Jedi Survivor, but it got overshadowed by Tears of the Kingdom.
Yep.
Like, come on, it's
And
like
what
that
a
was this was the big
Ooh.
game for us for a while because this
Yes.
so many times I said Breath of the Wild was so overrated. I didn't see why people call it the best game of all time and all that. Go back and listen to the first week after I played this game, people. It was like I said that this was probably my favorite game ever at the time. Obviously I've cooled off from there, but there are some really game changing stuff that Tears of the Kingdom did, and there's specific moments, story moments that were etched in my mind how you get the Master Sword here, the final sequence, you with your buddies, like you with your kind of like a getting into Ganon's castle with like everyone.
The Guardians of the Galaxy 3 hallway scene where you were just throwing bodies left and right. Your dudes are just taking things out. Just the way I think I've talked to you about it already. I don't know if I've said it on recording, but rewatching a Overly Sarcastic Productions video on Tears of the Kingdom, and just like the lore side, the atmosphere side, really focusing on the best parts of it made me really appreciate it again, how much of a step up it was from Breath of the Wild with like the storytelling, the way that they played things out, even though because they give you full control over the wit order to find the story, you can accidentally spoil yourself.
Yeah.
And even outside of the spoiler that you gave me, part of me already had like an inkling of something going on because I watched like a later one where they mention the death of Sonya and the draconification, and I was like, I wonder what that's about with all of the dragons flying over our heads. I just didn't connect to the specific dragon that we were looking for.
Yeah.
But it's still such a solid game. I respect it so much for what it did. They just don't make games like that. They try and they fail. And go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just glad that the Discord. I feel so much different about Tears of the Kingdom than I did Breath of the Wild. This is the one game that makes that I will defend till the end of days. So it's kind of like, especially the one I feel this is my favorite Zelda game. Like I feel Tears of the Kingdom was my favorite Zelda game. As much as my nostalgia holds Wind Waker so high up there. Revisiting the GameCube version a little bit, I was like, I was like a little bit like that. And Tears of the Kingdom completed the puzzle. It was like, I appreciated Breath of the Wild's innovations. I just was missing the Zelda stuff in it. And I feel Tears of the Kingdom tried its hardest to try to merge both. And that's why it's still one of my favorite games of this year. We can blast through a couple of different squares. Like the Forspoken Intent with Trust, that was the DLC for Forspoken. It was like...
And I didn't play it.
Yeah, you didn't play it. And it was like... It had better stuff than the main game from Forspoken, but it was super short. And to me, it was sad because it felt like they were getting a better grasp of where they could take this going forward, but the studio got merged into another one for Square Enix. So, Street Fighter 6. Yeah, it was like this one. My favorite memory for Street Fighter 6 was the fact that this was a technical snap for you, where you thought that the thing that you wanted to play this game for, the online, you were just like trying to connect the escape account that you were playing this game to your other email that was already linked to another stuff, and you were not understanding. I was like, I don't know what's so complicated for you until I did it for you, and then you were able to play online.
And I had a lot of fun after that point because the World Tour was a huge step forward in fighting games. I love what they do to teach you how the combat works, and I had a lot of fun messing with all of my friends on it, playing a lot of people, and really enjoying the heck out of it, and really trying to hope that people didn't play as Cammy's second outfit. And that's all that I have to say about that.
Yes. And I wish this... I wish the single player mode that they did, which was that open world thing, was better. It had charm, but I've come from the NetherRealm camp. I much prefer how they do stories over there. But I did play through the entire like arcade mode through all the characters just to kind of see it. And from a mechanics perspective, Street Fighter 6 is high up there. Then we got Diablo 4. This is what I call the game that made us realize that Destiny 2's loot system is a scam, because it was getting to see what an actual loot driven game that showers you on loot and always doubles that carrot in the stick feels like with Diablo 4.
And having quality of life alongside that, so that you never get stuck in a really frustrating position where Destiny just added the vault system in the middle of playtime. Yeah, Diablo was great for the story. To start it off, it queued you up in a really great way, and then they had a lot of issues leading after that point, to the point that even though I returned to it briefly, it wasn't enough for me. And
it was for me, but there's so much to play right now that it's like I still have it installed because there is something really let's just say there's something about Diablo that hits the brain, that it's like so mindless and entertaining in spots that I enjoy it, especially for a podcast game. That's why I keep it installed, especially because I have extra space. You don't. So, and to me, I use Diablo as my stopgap as we waited the other game, which was Final Fantasy 16. a game of quite synonymous with us at this point, especially because you initially, when you saw the trailer at the State of Play back in 2022 at 480p resolution, like all like blocking all that, like you really didn't like buy with like what it was showing you until you got to see it in high resolution. The trailers further that came later that year like really elevated your opinion on it. I always thought it would look cool. I was like, I know you had more appreciation for Devil May Cry style games than I did. So this was kind of like, I was excited for this. Was like my number 6, but this was your number 1, like most excited game for this year. And by the time we got that demo on June 12th, the one that gave us the 2 hours that was gonna save and continue when we bought the game, our hopes were like risen up a notch for this game. I feel like Final Fantasy 16, like in its high moments, it probably has like, what were some of your favorite moments of this of the year? I feel this game has a lot of those in there.
A lot of them.
It's just that it's also
the truth that we keep talking about. All of those crazy boss fights, the really touching emotional moments between not only romantic sides of it, but like brotherly love and all of like the bonds that are so important to us. And then also it's just a beefcake dude with a huge sword. So sign me up.
Yes. With a heart of gold.
Like, yes, with a heart of gold. And I loved that game. I enjoyed it so much. It was insane what I got to experience, and it ended like just a big bombastic anime fight, and it's great. I wish I could say more of it, but like to get into specifics would give us put us.
So we'll save the specifics for Game of the Year, because that game's gonna like factor heavy in this. But it's like, no other game touched me emotionally like this game. As I reviewed this game, I'll never forget how I felt after credits rolled at 11 at night, the day before I wrote the review, and then we had to record a spoiler cast. And guys can see me break down late in that spoiler cast when we were talking about some of the parts at the end of that game, because it's like the way it does family love touched me in a deep way, in a way that I was just not expecting. On top of it being such an incredible spectacle, the likes I still haven't seen like in another game this year. So as we were like winding down from the Final Fantasy 16, that's when we also bought the Pixel remasters, and that was good because it was like I had never played the original ones. Like you had played Final.
Your eyes were opened towards what Final Fantasy was.
Yes, and I found my second favorite game of all time there with Final Fantasy 6. Getting to play 1, 4, and 6 because that's how they were released in America, so I kind of wanted to get the American experience. And I had heard so many great things about Final Fantasy 6, and I cannot believe that the hype lived up for that 6th game. And on top of the fourth one was also incredible. If you find you pushing one of my favorite memories of this year was you pushing through, because you almost gave up and trying to finish in that one, because for some reason you kept saying that Final Fantasy games always like stumped you near the end and you would always drop. So but I helped to push.
A struggle, but I almost wish that I had more time to talk about the Pixel remasters, because 4 was a really great experience. I loved going back to that old style, and it actually made me want to go find other JRPGs, which you and I are going to have a talk about the Mana series, because it turns out it's not actually a turn-based system. It plays like old Legend of Zelda.
Oh, really? All of them?
Yep. Yeah, go look that up later on.
Okay.
But we're going to have a chat about that.
Absolutely.
So anyway, just Final Fantasy made it very clear why they are where they are right now, because they did some really solid stuff. But that's all I feel like I can say about that right now.
And back from a little technical hiccup there, you were saying, Paul?
Yeah, so anyway, kind of moving on from there,
Remnant, you have to Remnant 2?
Yeah, so Baldur's Gate 3. That was the next one in our whole cadre of things.
Yes, and then real quick, because it was Remnant 2. Remnant 2 I enjoyed until its final boss. We enjoyed playing co-op. This was one of the few that we were playing because we're waiting on the big games. So, but Baldur's Gate 3, we're talking about it now because that's when the PC release happened. So might as well get it in now.
Getting it from hindsight, finding it ourselves. What an insane game that brings back the best parts of the 2000s RPGs, where you could just have any option that you wanted, do whatever the heck you wanted. The deep emotional side of these characters that are like, there's not a single one that's just like one note. Even the ones that you seem to hate, there is so much deeper behind that if you talk to them about the right things. The gameplay itself is so strategic. that, like, I don't know if you saw, there's this one thing that I reblogged or retweeted, whatever, where they talked about how like 14, 15 different people operated around this one single uh, goblin camp essentially, and just every single one of them did a completely different way of handling this entire plot situation,
Mm-hmm.
all the way from just kill them all to lock every door and lock them in, drink them out and then poison their drinks, seduce the leader, um, act like you're going to work with them and then betray them in the last minute, smearing crap on your face, and they think you're so insane that they just let you through anyway. There's just so many different options for this. I appreciate so much about what it did, and while it's certainly not the most polished experience, it is the most ambitious. 100%. I wish I could talk about all
Yeah.
of the insane experiences I had about it, but we're gonna keep moving.
Yes, if you beat it, that gives you the carte blanche for whenever we get to Game of the Year. But you gotta
Craziest
beat it
thing is,
first.
even
Yeah.
if I beat it, it's still gonna have to stay in like the 7th or 8th
Yeah.
space because there's so many other games this
They
year.
preferred, yeah.
But
And
anyway, yeah.
yes, and,
What's
and
next?
then we went quickly through Atlas Fallen and Immortals of Avium, the two games that were kind of like thrown there in August as kind of like waiting games. Definitely the best ones of these two was Immortals of Avium because it's probably the most fun shooter that I had played at that point until I played Avatar recently. But it was like a meaty story-based first-person shooter about magic that obviously had a weird graphical look because of its low res and all that, but it definitely gave me those Wolfenstein vibes, some Titanfall vibes at times that I was just happy to get to see. That was the point where I realized, crap, no shooters have come out. What's happened with that genre? It's like that genre feels very underserved, and the ones that came out earlier in this year were big disappointments. And then Atlas Fallen was just such a nothing. It was like it's not bad, it's not good. It was just nothing. And then we got Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon. I would dare say, your biggest surprise of the year, and probably mine also too, because I should have been surprises from software, and I had known of Armored Core. I played Armored Core 4 when I rented it back in 2007. It's just that, with new perspectives of what a From Software game is, like just the sheer quality of the minute to minute of Armored Core 6 is immaculate. It's like this was a game that when I really got into it, because I came in late because I needed to play other stuff,
Yep.
that I decided to jump in. That turned out, again, me going down to end up high. With Armored Core 6, it was just like lovely. Seeing so many, just the destruction of Rubicon, just getting to see all that, like that, just the picturesque nature of it, of its decaying world. It's insane boss fights. And me rather like wanting to drive off a cliff, trying to beat Baltius, the robot that becomes Melania in Act 4, the final battle with the AI thing at the top of like at the top of the satellite. The satisfaction of nailing the perfect build when you realize this is taking too long. Yeah, I'm resetting because I did something wrong, and getting to figure that out, and just how quickly it gets you back into things, and doing all those tiny boss challenges that the list just kept going on and on and on and on and on and on, because it was just so cool getting to beat all those robots. Man, it was like Armored Core 6, I feel, got underserved this year. Is a much better game that a lot of people give it credit for, but also it's a little bit more niche. So I understand why, despite the From Software coming into this game at the peak of their powers after Elden Ring dominated the world last year, the fact that it barely made a blip just shows how big this year was overall. But I did like this game more than most this year.
This game it is definitely the perfect mech game ever, and it might be one of the most perfect action games ever.
Mm-hmm.
Just from the sheer status of being able to switch things around, change things up, your play style is completely different based on not only your weaponry but your entire mech itself. The way you can replay the game so easily, play through missions, get higher rankings, redo the arena thing. Do you want to go do the 3 different endings to the game? Go replay the game 3 times. And each time you replay it, you have more weaponry and more armor that you could just change completely the way you play this game.
It's an onion.
Insane.
It is a literal onion that you keep like peeling and peeling and peeling, and there's more and more and more that just keeps getting better and better and better. I'm glad it won at the Game Awards Best Action Game. Like, if it needed to win something. It won where it deserved.
Justifiably.
Yes. So yeah, I can't wait to like getting back to it, because I definitely want to see the New Game Plus and see the things that you told me that I could see, because I got the bad ending apparently. So then Starfield.
Then we had Starfield.
Yes, this was our most anticipated game coming into the fall. This was it. This was the one. Like, if there was any chance of us seeing like what would be like the massive game that it would be to beat, it was gonna be this one. Unfortunately, it got Baldur's Gate because Baldur's Gate came in a month before it. Showed many the people that got to play it on PC got to see like what a real advanced RPG was, and Starfield has many things I really like. Actually, a lot. I spent 101 hours in that game. I checked the stats, which is kind of sad. A Dream of Mine is a perfect space game. A game where you explore planets. You're able to engage in combat. It's like the idea of No Man's Sky, kind of like fulfilling its potential. That was kind of what I wanted out of Starfield. Unfortunately, it's like it didn't even come close when you really think about it. Like, it's dated design that I tried justifying it, because when that game enraptured me a couple 10 hours in, when I finally started getting more into the flow of exploration and all that, before it finally hit me that it was just fast travel the game, and just like the way that the fidelity of that game, which I tried justifying as like a Bethesda game is kind of like that, and if I was able to like enjoy a game like Tears of the Kingdom that it doesn't look as pristine as many other games because it's pushing its design so hard, that's like a decent trade-off for me. At a certain point, I feel like that was just excuse making, because it was like, yeah, this game seems like it's ambitious, but it's just all smoke and mirrors. It's like it's trapped in old design. And by the time that I roll credits, which a memory I'll always remember, is like the ending of Starfield coincided with the death of my great grandma. So already my mind was already kind of like in a very fragile state. And then when I saw the ending of Starfield was basically just a setup for their New Game Plus, that was what it was all leading up to, which for some people it's cool, especially I've seen what 33 runs of New Game Plus does to your world. So It feels like they put all their chips into the repeatability of the world instead of the depth of the world. And though there were a couple quests that I really enjoyed about that game, the region quest was cool until I had to do stealth when my stealth there's my dog. My stealth build was like really low. I was like, I feel there's a lack of elegance here, and this is just not the next Skyrim. This had the hype for me because it was the next game from the creators of Skyrim. But then you realize like things, you will have your kings, your presidents at a specific point in time, and Bethesda's time in the light as the kings of RPG was back in 2011. Since then, it's like they have refused to evolve, and I feel that with Starfield that came more to bear. Especially like this was also a very insufferable game to try to discuss because so many Xbox people define their whole identity into this thing, and it's like so many trying to like discredit the credibility of reviews when the big name reviewers gave it 7s and all of that, and what's the importance of reviews, blah blah blah, and in the end reviews got it right. I would say it's an 83. I think it's an 82. It's like there's something to it, but let's not kid ourselves, Paul. We were thinking this game was gonna be like in that Zelda caliber.
It should have been.
It should have been, yeah.
And I think the Nakey Jakey video that we both saw explained it very well. Just it's a game mechanic that it was outdated 10 years ago, and it's only gotten more clear how far that gap is going. Yeah. And I was really hoping, because I love Fallout, I love Skyrim, that you could still make a really solid game, but it just didn't have the soul and the atmosphere. And because games like Skyrim and Fallout thrive in those in-between moments when you go, I'm going to go here, but I'm going to find 40 different things to do on the way.
Starfield didn't have that. Yeah, because it was so fragmented. And that exemplified to me, like, if Starfield had just been like a space game, like in one planet that allows you to kind of like seamless as I'm exploring, oh, what's this distraction? And oh, what is this Dark Brotherhood thing or things like that? So, something that you would stumble is like, that is so core to the experience, and I didn't realize it until the more I kept playing Starfield, and then I went back to just try Fallout 4 again when I just to see. I was like, was I crazy? And I'm like, yes, like Fallout 4 is more fun. It's like I would hope that they return to the seamless world. The fact that this game didn't have its walk out of a bald moment, like Avatar had it, not this game. that should have portended things to come. But I did give it a shot, people. I gave it 100 hours of my time. I really wanted to love it, but I knew that I had issues with it. And then again, Nikki Jakey puts the words right out of our mouths, because I've been saying it a lot. Like, this is one of my bigger disappointments of the year. How big? I have other things in that list, but we're definitely going to talk about that when we get to Game of the Year. And then in between there, we got Mortal Kombat 1, Lies of P, and Payday 3. Mortal Kombat 1 I played recently because of that sale, and again, they're to me the kings of single player stuff. Everything else around it is like Street Fighter does better. Lies of P, we played recently. We actually also bought the PS5 version for it because I just wanted the game to look better, because those games just feel better on the PS5 controller for me. Lies of P is the closest I've seen as Souls-like, not by From Software, kind of nail it. Like, it nails the vibe and style the closest I've seen it, and it's one that I want to see if I can sneak in more time with. Payday 3, that one's special for us because that was our gateway to getting to play with Travis from IGN. We got a code early for this. I got to do the review for that. I screwed up in a way that I usually don't screw up when I play games, and it was hilarious. Yep. And Paul was happy it wasn't him.
So, very happy. But
happy. It's like Payday 3 in the end of the day, it's like it crumbled after its launch period, apparently. But at the time we played it at launch, especially getting to play with Travis, it was a really good time. Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty, Paul. This one, it splits for us because I've only played base game just on its 2.0 update. You got to play the Phantom Liberty stuff.
The entirety of that baby.
And
from 2.0 all the way through the main story up until the point where the DLC is allowed, and all of the DLC.
Yeah.
But yeah, what were you saying?
2.0, you know, when the glasses fell off for me where Starfield was playing Cyberpunk 2077 2.0. I was like, when I got to play that and got to see the complete version of this thing, I was like, you know, Starfield, I can't make excuses for you anymore, especially looking at this. So especially getting to play the early areas that I remember playing in my broken ass PS4 version, and in the new 2.0 update that now is like at its highest, most pristine thing, where finally I can like grab, chokehold an enemy, and it would always be like this, like it would do the animation, the enemy would be there, and then it would snap into place when I was chokeholding them. Finally seeing that they fixed that, I was like, well, yeah, the game feels complete now. Wow, this is what a modern RPG should be, and I can't wait to get to Phantom Liberty because I know that Phantom Liberty is like the best piece of content of that game, and that's why you play it. Take it away.
So, this game was absolutely insane because just like CDPR's whole situation, they give you an entire game plus inside of a little expansion. Going through like just the opening mission being this multi-tiered genre shifting mad dash Olympus Has Fallen style movie where you are rushing for your life to get to this jet real quick. There's weird intrigue going on. There's something that just doesn't match up and you can't figure it out. Somebody shuts Johnny off in your ear and you're like, that just doesn't happen. It immediately grabs your mind and your attention in such an amazing way. It adds so much extra stuff, different weapons, different enemy types, different vehicles, different gigs. All of the gigs from the main story, as we've always known, is mostly go here, shoot a bunch of people, that's it. Here it is Witcher 3 level side missions and content, and then the final story made me depressed for like 3 days. Because of just how difficult it is to live a normal life in Night City.
Someone from our clan just finished Phantom Liberty 2, right, and got that ending.
Yep. And it's like a lot of people, depending on how you judge it, could be the best ending for the game, and that's how hard it is to make that decision because there's a lot of really rough endings for you no matter what. It's all entirely about your perspective on how you view the world around you, honestly. So it sounds really high prestige fart smelling style of talking, but I tell you, I had so much fun returning to this world and these characters, seeing all of the new ones, and genuinely seeing like where you changed your dialogue options really altered the way that things went.
Yeah, and I hope I get to see it before midnight, before end of year rolls around, because it's like,
I really hope so.
Yeah, because Phantom Liberty has been the one that people have been trying to do the mental gymnastics to try to give it like Game of the Year props to it. That's how good it is, people. Like everyone that plays it says the same thing, and how it completes the full redemption of this game that shouldn't have been a redemption story because of when they launched this thing, but it actually did. It's like it's Cyberpunk now as it is in 2023. It's a completely transformed game, and it's closer to the dream RPG in a cyberpunk environment that it promised all those years back. And will it always have the stench of that launch? Maybe, but you cannot deny that CDPR has tried hard to move on from that. The fact that they won best ongoing game, which is so dumb because it's not a live service game, but again, everyone trying to pull a Martian and trying to give someone a award or something. It just goes to show you that they really put in the work. I believe people like Paul and Ains, my AIC, that reviewed this thing when they told me that that's like legit one of the best things that came out this year, if not the best for many. So Paul Tassi gave it its Game of the Year. So over at Forbes.
AC Mirage.
Yes, AC Mirage. This one was a nice back to basics that I really wanted for the Assassin's Creed franchise. Obviously, we got early code for this. Thank you, Season Gaming, for that, because they wanted to reward me, because this has been a year where many of the reviews I did from them was from games we bought because code would just not go, or we bought the game way too early and then the code came in. But yeah, like AC Mirage was like, I'm glad Ubisoft understood that there was a high contingent of people that missed a non-RPG style Assassin's Creed game. And while not entirely perfect, I feel the story is atrocious. From an assassin perspective, getting to see the newer mechanics be paired back to an AC1 style simplicity, and how that simplicity worked well with the 5 main assassinations that they made, including a few that harken back to the multiple, giving you different options to approach the target, that was closer to the Assassin's Creed Unity black box thing that they started testing back then. This was something that I'm glad that it was good. I'm glad it sold super well. Better than anyone expected it would be. In fact, it was a transcendental seller, this game. To the point that in Europe, it beat Spider-Man and Mario, when obviously Spider-Man and Mario beat it in the United States. It shows that there's still a power in the Assassin's Creed brand, but more than anything, this was the game where it's clear that Ubisoft put less money into this. It was a cheaper game. It was clear it was a test bed. It's clear that's what Ubisoft wanted. You're like, okay, these people say they want this. Have it. Let's see how it does. Boom. Great future for Assassin's Creed now, following this thing because they saw the success. If it wasn't successful, it was like we would have seen in the sales, but no, it's like that's probably the bigger thing, because I definitely prefer other Assassin's Creed games, that they're way better ones. In fact, I would even argue from the RPG ones, I like Origins and Odyssey better. I think it's better than Valhalla by the premise that it's not an endless thing also, and it actually works as an Assassin's game. But I feel like this teaches, as Ubisoft keeps like rebuilding itself, as we were talking with our Avatar thing, that they got to see that this was an experiment that worked, and I hope that they really built from that when we move on from the Japanese game that is clearly going to be an RPG next year.
For me, the AC Mirage was just exactly that shot of adrenaline that the series needed, and it clearly is starting this, wow, I didn't realize that this is what everybody wanted kind of attitude from Ubisoft, where they struck gold and they hit it exactly the way that people were looking for. The return to the Baghdad, the focus on the assassins as they were when we first fell in love with the series.
Hooded with their
hooded with the awesome blades, the throwing knives being such a solid mechanic in there. Of course, we didn't. We did have it, but it just wasn't very good. I think. I loved all of that. There's little parts of it that I wasn't huge on, but overall, it was short enough. It was great, solid. Can't complain.
Yeah, one of my platinum trophies this year. It was like 25 hours. It was like I got more than enough. Like, I feel that's all you need in an Assassin's Creed game. You don't need this game to be 100 hours. It's like, I feel this showed a lot of people what a good one, and I'm glad everyone showed up. That was the thing. I knew that was gonna be the metric that was needed for a long-running franchise like this one. Then Lords of the Fallen, I played it briefly because I bought it for a Black Friday sale. It's probably the prettiest Souls game I've ever seen. Mechanically, I need to play a little bit more, but that's one that I hope, because I bought it for both of us. I bought it in our account during Black Friday. I had a disposable income. for that one. And this was recommended strongly by Travis. I trust his opinion and stuff. Uh, he reviewed that one. In fact, he had just finished this review when he guessed it over on the Xbox. His review had just come out, so he was able to briefly talk about this game on the show. So it was cool getting to hear directly from him the day that the review embargo lifted. So then we got the duology that was Super Mario Bros. Wonder and Marvel Spider-Man 2. One of the bigger days in releases that year. One of my favorite day releases that year. I want to start just quickly with Super Mario Bros. Wonder. What a delightful game to get to play that with my mom and dad. Showing the piranha scene from the second level, like getting to show like the immense creativity that's bursting with the wonder seeds in every freaking level. It's like you can tell that in the almost 10 plus years that we didn't have an original 2D Mario, that Nintendo just was like bursting with creativity, visual and inventive level design creativity that was seen throughout in the 2.5 days that I completely played this game. And I know I was able to let you borrow my account, so at least you could see a few of those things, because I knew you were not gonna be you're not a big 2D Mario guy. You're more of a 3D Mario guy. But I wanted to see if this was a game that you could play with your wife. And the stories you told me were funny. Again,
it was a good time. And we actually went back and played on my birthday weekend together, and that was much smoother and still equally as fun, because we kind of got into a good rhythm of like how things needed to go. And there were some times where like she would beat me to the end goal, and just was like so excited about that process. Apparently she's let my boss's kids play it when she went to babysit them, and they're
that's awesome.
Like 8 and 9, and they're like obsessed with it. They loved it. So it's just a great solid game, and I'm really glad it exists.
And glad you mentioned kids. I'm glad this is the 2D Mario that's widely available. That's like front and center for new kids. I rather this than New Super Mario Bros. New Super Mario Bros. was fun back in the DS, but it's overused aesthetic for 4 games, like for those games. I feel, especially how modern kids are, they would see that it would be like how bland it looks, and they would have a bad opinion of Mario because of them in a way, because Mario used to be like more colorful. And I feel Wonder brought that wonder back into like into a 2D Mario platformer. So definitely one of the most fun games I had playing a game this year. Marvel Spider-Man 2, though, Paul. This was your second most anticipated game for this year. This was my fourth anticipating game this year. It's funny how I'm going to say this, Paul. This was one of the most fun games I played this year. It's also one of the biggest disappointments of the year. Equally.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it's weird. It's both. To me in particular, it's the fact that the story didn't hit as hard as the first game, and the bugs that I got to see in this thing were unacceptable for a Sony game. Like, I don't expect... I expect that from a Bethesda game. I had a more polished time with Starfield than I did Spider-Man 2. And...
Gosh, that's saying a lot.
Yeah, that's saying a lot. And also Spider-Man 2 over a little too quickly for my taste. And what adds also stem of disappointment, I shouldn't fall into this game, but I'm gonna say it also. The fact that New Game Plus got delayed to 2024. Like, they missed the boat so hard to give us a reason to like get to replay this game with its best elements, because why it's also one of the most fun things of the year, Act 3 is phenomenal. It is so good when Venom shows up in that game. Onwards, from Venom onward, everything, when the game becomes a sequel to Web of Shadows, or like a modern version of Web of Shadows, and how wild the story turns get, and then when you really think about how much wheel spinning there was when we were like stuck with Kraven, there's just something like the 2018 game and Miles Morales were just better. Like, when I look back, I know you said you prefer Spider-Man 2 over Miles Morales, and I can imagine from a systemic side, I see how, but to me, I feel like Miles Morales used its time and like its systems much better than Spider-Man 2. When I think of Spider-Man 2, like it hasn't really lingered in the mind. The good parts were great in the moment, and it's as fun as the other Spider-Man games were, but I do feel that they missed the mark in some areas. For you specifically, which I have coined #GadgetGate, the whole gadget situation ruined it for you.
Honestly, I'm kind of even done talking about it overall. It was just, it was a good time. I enjoyed the move forward. I'm glad the black suit situation is exactly what I was
Mm-hmm.
expecting,
Mm-hmm.
and lots of plot twists, and I overall enjoyed myself. It was just
Mm-hmm.
not kind of too little too late in a lot of ways,
Mm-hmm.
and just the whole situation around New Game Plus being pushed back and back and back, and they're like, guys, we promise it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Just it's like I'm gonna move on with my life now.
Exactly. It's like it's kind of like what happened with the God of War New Game Plus, the Ragnarok New Game Plus. By the time it came out, Resident Evil 4 was out. So it's like
Yeah.
when you wait too long, especially when we're not in this point, like if it had been a slower cadre of releases, like getting that New Game Plus would have like worked well. The fact that they waited so long for it, and I wonder if the problem why they're taking so long is that they don't want the day one patch thing to ever happen again, where people swear up and down this game was not as buggy in the review environment as it was for us when we played it day one. Like with the day one patch, we're supposed to make things less buggy, not more buggy. Uh, Maybe they're trying to like buy their time and not let that happen again. But then what that happens is that because it feels like Spider-Man 2 has less incentive to remain in that world once you platinum it compared to the original one, it made it easier to recede in the mind. And then when I really think about this entire year of games, I feel like I enjoy other games more overall. Like when I really think about it, and especially with I expect more from Insomniac and Spider-Man. But again, this is still in my top 10, people. But just know it's like I have a sentiment to it where it's like there's a disappointment where I see where this could have been like easy top 2, 3 game, but no, like no. So it's really weird how that happened, and I was super high on it early on, and then like it just started unraveling for me. So and until I finally hit those like excellent final moments, the Venom introduction, one of the top moments of this year, incredible moment.
Solid.
Yes. I just wish how I felt about that Act 3 was how I felt about that entire game. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably where the disappointment comes in because again, it's still a great game, but expectations definitely like got away from
But
that one.
speaking of expectations and the lack thereof,
Yeah,
Alan Wake 2 coming in like a sleeper slap across the face,
Alan Wake
bringing
2,
horror
yeah,
to a new level,
Alan Wake 2,
showcasing tech
yeah,
at a new level.
yeah.
To what we gonna say?
The meme of Henry Cavill and Jason Momoa. Of like
Yep.
Jason Momoa coming,
Yeah.
us being like, we have all our favorite games. Here comes Alan Wake, like as Jason Momoa about to tackle. Alan Wake 2 is a work of art, Paul. Like it transcends the medium of video games. Yes, that's pretentious to say, but I've never seen a game that marries in-game storytelling, FMB, music, and everything together, like all different mediums of entertainment into one cohesive package, while still reminding us that it's a goddamn video game. It's a from the 3 horror games that we played this year, including Dead Space and Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
Alan Wake 2 was probably the one that plays the worst from a combat perspective because it is true survival horror. You watch an enemy in this game or 2 enemies and you're like freaking out of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
The sound design, wake,
Mm-hmm.
you hear that and you see the shadows when you're playing as Alan Wake, like it like unnerves you. The quick cuts of like the distorted faces that happen over time that reach their crescendo at the asylum, at the grandpa asylum with the freaking grandma that kept like screaming more and more and more and more. How expertly this game shifts tones to give us the best moment of any game this year that also got to be played live action over at the Game Awards with We Sing, the Herald of Darkness. It's like a game that can be exhausting to play because we were talking about that New Game Plus showed up with this game so quickly. I think that made us more bitter about Spider-Man to be like, Alan Wake came out later and now we have its New Game Plus. What's your excuse, Spider-Man? And how like I tried early on and hearing the different voiceovers and the framing of the scenes now, I'm like, gosh, this is gonna break my mind, isn't it? It's like trying to remember if this is how it was or not, like kind of like how it really plays on the expectations of storytelling and narrative and Alan Wake's own pretentiousness of him being a hack writer whose hack writing unleashed this hell in Bright Falls in the Dark Place and things like that. It's like Alan Wake 2 is so special. It's a super special game. I'm really hoping they do a physical edition because I know I was seeing some reports that digitally was not selling too well, but I feel this game has the awards prestige behind it that more people need to like need to explore. It's like Alan Wake 2 is just so special. The music, I found you the song that played every time Sam Lake got to like that's one of the songs that play in between chapters, the presentation, the mind place, how it uses gameplay to deliver one of the low-key more emotional moments of this game with Saga Anderson's like self-doubts in trapped inside her own mind at the end. Like there's just Alan Wake 2 is an incredibly special game, and I can't wait for Control 2. That it's obviously gonna build upon this because everything is connected now. So
I will never forget several of those moments from that game. They live without me even wanting them in my head. The wellness center entirely, walking up to that old lady and getting scared the crap out of me. Everything that goes down, just my goodness, the way that you play things out, the dichotomy of how the mechanics feel like Saga is pushing further in. Alan himself is trying to run away. It is a terrifying and powerful experience, and the fact that they somehow put out a new game plus mode long before Spider-Man will, and said that they're changing a lot of things inside of it, has
from a
me
narrative
just
perspective.
sitting here, from a narrative perspective, and not just a game enhancements, but what a game, what a time, what a year,
and a new ending. I need to see that. Like apparently, especially with its chilling cliffhanger ending, that spiraled my mind out of control when it landed. Man, it's like that was. I feel like that's when we hit the peak for gaming at that point, because then immediately we got Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, which its campaign was a huge disappointment. That's around the time where Fortnite. We started getting into the year one of Fortnite stuff, and that was a fun time with the clan. The final shadow dropping at the day of the Game Awards, also Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, which we talked about already in the main show, that we're still gonna keep playing, and then me finishing the 2 recent DLCs of Final Fantasy 16 and God of War Ragnarok Valhalla, which I would say Valhalla was like another peak to kind of end the year on, personally, of something like new releases, and kind of how we were saving some of the sport and getting to see old things like Helios, like getting to the guy that you behead from God of War 3, seeing like things of hearing the history of Helios that was also in the PSP games and things like that. Man, it was like what a year. Like absolutely what a year. When you look at it, all of this, like going all the way from Forspoken to God of War Ragnarok Valhalla right now, and me still missing finishing Phantom Liberty, and maybe I'll keep chipping more about Baldur's Gate 3. I don't know, it's just not. I mean, not force it, yeah.
Phantom Pain. I mean, not Phantom Pain.
The Phantom Pain,
Liberty.
Yeah, Phantom Liberty, yeah. Phantom, it's more my forte. It's like, just what a year. It's an absolute year. And I feel that's why I wanted to do this. Like, remember, like, this was the kind of year that made this entire thing, like, looking back at the games we play, worth it, because there weren't as many, and so many of high quality. Even when some slightly disappointed others, it's like, man, I'd rather this than what happened last year, where we're like scraping the bottom of the barrel. So, and with that poll, that ends our look back on the games that we played in 2023. When we come back on, let me see when. Looking at that January,
like the second January 6th, was it?
January 6th on a Saturday.
Oh, so, no, that is not the right way.
Either January 4th or January 11th. Probably something January 11th. Yeah, probably January 11th, because I'll still be, actually, yes, January 11th, I'll still be in the United States on the 4th. So, we're coming back for season 4 of the X Button. Technically season 5 if you want to include 2020's episode.
Back, baby.
Yeah. So, making our way to episode 150, which is wild. And can't wait to see what happens that year. But Paul, where can people find you? No, we're done.
As always, y'all can find me at Dork of Art on Twitter. I've been posting memes, drawings, mostly me just doodling in my notebook. And hopefully one day they bring back that integration of Twitter and PlayStation. But until then, that's just what I'm going to be doing. Where can they find you?
I mean, you can share stuff by downloading to your phone and then just hashtagging PS5 share.
I can. It's just a really slow process.
Yeah, it's just an extra step that makes you think your life. They can find me on Twitter /X at @A_Segovia. They can find me on Instagram /Threads at Alejandro_Segovia93. And they can find my written content at both thecriticalcorner.com and seasongaming.com. You can read my Final Fantasy 16 Echoes of the Fallen review over at seasongaming.com. By the time this episode posts, the God of War Ragnarok Valhalla review should be up. And then sometime late next week, you'll see my Avatar review. And then we're going to be doing Game of the Year stuff over at Season Gaming on early January. But I might write my Game of the Year personal stuff that I'll be using for this show over at thecriticalcorner.com. So, Paul, it's been a year. I cannot believe it's over. We get some well rest. Next year is looking like a doozy. Hopefully, like nothing really crazy happens, right? So
Yeah, we'll see. We'll be here as long as there's not anything too wild going on.
yeah. So yeah. Until next time. I want to thank you all for listening all this year. Your growth, the growth that you have helped us, especially in the audio side, doesn't go unseen. Obviously, we're looking forward to getting to a point where our listeners get to interact more with us. Maybe we can open a Discord around that.
That would be nice one day. But yeah, the last little closing thoughts is things are a little crazy, but it's a good thing that we all share the same passion. And don't worry, because it will be all okay one day.
Yeah, so enjoy the holidays, people. Enjoy your Christmas. Hopefully you get cool Christmas presents. Enjoy the sales. Go play with snow if you get some snow. And or if you still have grass, go touch some grass a little bit, but then still play some games, enjoy the break, and we'll see you next year. And remember,
press X
to play.
Good night, everybody.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be a father too.
What?